Chapter 173. In her memory, this Qin Fenger hated the original owner of her body. Sometimes, they would even deliberately find someone to insult the original owner, or in front of the elders, they would pick out the original owner's poor grades and make a big fuss about it. In the end, everyone in town found out that Qin Yiru had given birth to a daughter who was an idiot with the worst grades in school. Qin Fenger looked average and her facial features were average as well. She did not stand out among the crowd. Most importantly, her face was covered in freckles, making her look even uglier. One of the main reasons she hated the original owner of her body was that she was so outstanding, had good grades, was popular, and was well liked by the teachers. Why was Yun Jian, an idiot with terrible academic performance, so pretty? Yet she had to wear such an ugly face. Hence, Qin Fenger was utterly fixated on Yun Jian and bore a grudge against her. Yun Jian was not in a hurry with Qin Fenger. She merely glanced at her, amused. "If you can be here, why can't I?" Yun Jian retorted bluntly. She then turned around and pretended that Qin Fenger and her friends were not there. She pointed at a few skewers and reported to the owner, 50 mutton skewers, 20 sausages, and 10 rice cakes. As she spoke, she turned to ask Zhang Xiaofeng and the rest, "Do you guys want anything else?" "Jian, I want 5 more tofu skewers." Chen Sini did not hold back as she told Yun Jian with a wink. "Give me 2 more pairs of grilled wings," Ling Yichen said with a grin with a press of his lips. "Same for me and Sini," Zhang Xiaofeng replied. Qin Fenger, who was on the other end of the line, was taken aback by Yun Jian's retort. Since when did this little B***tch become so arrogant? How dare she refute her? More importantly, Yun Jian and the 3 people beside Yun Jian were acting like she did not exist. Qin Fenger had a stomach full of anger. Especially after Yun Jian ignored Qin Fenger, a boy with a face full of red spots and acne sitting next to Qin Fenger mocked her, "Hey, Qin Fenger, look at the little beauty ignoring you." As he spoke, the boy whistled as he sized up Yun Jian. For a moment, everyone who sat with Qin Fenger was focused on Yun Jian. Qin Fenger was most annoyed by this feeling. Her grades were better than Yun Jian's, and she was better than her in everything. Why was she able to attract everyone's attention so easily? Why? Coincidentally, the owner of the restaurant had already prepared the barbecue skewers and seasoned them. He put them all on plates and handed them to Yun Jian and the others. The shop owner smiled foolishly and said, "Young lady, take it. There's a total of 85 yuan here." The prices of goods in 1998 were much lower than now. At that time, 80 RMB was enough for a student to live on for a long time. Yun Jian was treating today. She was very generous and looked like she was going to have a good meal. When Qin Fenger heard this, she was secretly shocked. Qin Yiru's monthly salary was only a few hundred yuan. Yun Jian was treating people to a meal here and it was close to 100 yuan. Where did she get the money? Hence, Qin Fenger used this as an excuse to pick on Yun Jian again. She saw Yun Jian take out 100 yuan from her pocket and her eyes turned red. She pointed at Yun Jian and shouted, "Yun Jian, where did you get so much money? Don't think I don't know that your mother only earns a few hundred yuan a month working for others. She even has to pay for your family's expenses." Then, Qin Fenger sized up Zhang Xiaofeng, Ling Yichen, and Chen Sini who were sitting beside Yun Jian. She saw that the 3 of them were wearing branded coats. They were the symbol of wealth from head to toe. Qin Fenger could not help but point at Yun Jian. She twitched her mouth and slandered her, "Yun Jian, don't tell me you're their sugar baby." As soon as she said that, the people sitting beside Qin Fenger were obviously stunned. They looked at Yun Jian with disdain. Chapter 174. Qin Fenger seemed to enjoy the feeling of Yun Jian being looked down upon by others. This feeling allowed her to regain her confidence in the crowd. After she said that, she added fuel to the fire, "Yun Jian, even if you lack money, you can't do this kind of thing. How can you face your mother by doing this?" Qin Fenger's words gave the surrounding people the illusion that Yun Jian was really being kept by someone. Something that didn't even exist was said to be true by her. Zhang Xiaofeng took a bite of the tofu skewer, but when he heard Qin Fenger's words, he spat out the tofu crumbs in his mouth. Yun Jian, who could afford to drive a restricted sports car in the world, would need them to keep her. Wasn't this as unbelievable as a pig flying in the sky? How could she, Yun Jian, be a poor person? After Yun Jian heard Qin Fenger's words, she narrowed her eyes and swallowed the mutton skewer naturally. She tilted her head and looked at Qin Fenger. Then, she indifferently let out a creepy chuckle. What? What? What I said was the truth. Qin Fenger felt that the atmosphere wasn't right, but she still insisted on her own opinion. At the same time, she looked at Zhang Xiaofeng and reminded him, kindly, don't worry. Let me tell you, Yun Jian's family is very poor. Her father is a gambler and owes a lot of debt. I'm also kindly reminding you that a person like her must have slept with many men. For a person like her, there's nothing she wouldn't do for money. You still want this kind of broken shoe? Whoosh. Just as Qin Fenger was getting more and more worked up, trying to persuade Zhang Xiaofeng to stay away from Yun Jian with her usual confidence of picking on other people's weaknesses, Zhang Xiaofeng suddenly stopped. A slender bamboo skewer for barbecuing was stuck on the round table in front of Qin Fenger with a whoosh sound. Being able to penetrate deep into the wood by 3 fissures was just that. When everyone turned their heads to look again, they saw that the bamboo skewer in Yun Jian's hand had disappeared without a trace. Qin Fenger's eyes widened as she watched the scene unfold. She swallowed hard and took a deep breath. Yun Jian was actually able to insert such a slender bamboo stick into the round wooden table from such a distance. Everyone was in a state of panic. Even though Zhang Xiaofeng and the other 2 were used to Yun Jian's skills, they couldn't help but cheer for her. While everyone was still in a daze, Yun Jian had already appeared in front of Qin Fenger like a ghost. Her faint words seemed to have come from hell, making everyone's hair stand on end. I'm a mistress? Just as everyone heaved a sigh of relief, Yun Jian's relaxed voice rang out once again. She stretched out her fair and delicate hand and took the bamboo stick from the round table. While Qin Fenger was still in a daze, the bamboo stick slid across Qin Fenger's freckled cheek. Yun Jian's action made Qin Fenger unable to react in time. She shivered reflexively. Then Yun Jian's indifferent but terrifying voice lingered in Qin Fenger's ears like a nightmare. Which eye of yours saw that I'm a mistress? I don't mind poking that eyeball for you, or even blinding both your eyes, just like this. As she spoke, the bamboo stick in her hand slid past Qin Fenger's eyes again. Ah! Qin Fenger was suddenly reminded of how Yun Jian had stabbed the bamboo skewer into the round table with a fling of her hand just now. She remembered the coldness of Yun Jian's bamboo stick when it slid across her cheeks. She shrieked, the image of Yun Jian stabbing her eyeball with the bamboo skewer flashing in her mind from being intimidated. Qin Fenger ran away like a madwoman, leaving her group of companions looking at each other in dismay. Hypnotism. She just used hypnotism on Qin Fenger. At this time, a boy sitting far away suddenly pointed at Yun Jian and shouted. He looked agitated. Yun Jian suddenly frowned. Chapter 175. Yes, Yun Jian knew hypnotism, and the hypnotism that she had mastered was definitely not as simple as it seemed. She was a secret agent in her past life, the top secret agent in the secret agent world, slaying God. However, she was very young in her past life. She was only 16 years old, but she had already ascended to the throne that some people might not even be able to touch in their entire lives. It was not without reason. She was not a genius that only appeared once in a million years. She was very ordinary, just one of the billions of lives on Earth. However, her experience was different. She had accidentally saved an old man during a mission. The old man's whereabouts were uncertain and he came and went without a trace. However, it was this old man who taught her many things that ordinary people could not come into contact with. For example, hypnotism was one of them. Other than that, she was involved in many things that others could not even imagine. Yun Jian's hypnotism in her past life was to the extent that she could let the other party feel comfortable and enjoy dying after being stabbed to death. She had only done something to Qin Fenger earlier, causing her to have hypnotic hallucinations and run away after seeing some horrifying scenes. This level of hypnotism was very simple. Strictly speaking, the old man was Yunjian's master. Although it was not officially acknowledged, he had already taught Yunjian his lifelong knowledge, allowing her to have a meteoric rise in the secret agent world. This secret art had also become Yunjian's trump card, a trump card that she had never told anyone. Yunjian had no idea where the old man had gone. He had always disappeared without a trace and lived a carefree life. Perhaps he had already retired to somewhere. Yunjian wanted to see him again, but she did not know if she would have the chance. Today, Yunjian had used Qin Fenger to practice. She had performed a simple hypnotism on her and made her see some horrifying scenes. However, she did not expect that her hypnotism would be seen through. Yunjian turned her head sideways and glanced at the boy who had just spoken. She saw that the boy had a delicate and pretty face, looking innocent and childish at the same time. When he saw Yunjian looking at him, he recalled how he had been shouting and wrangling just now. His cheeks inexplicably blushed, and he actually became as shy as a little girl. Yunjian raised her eyebrows and looked at him angrily. "What did you say?" Her tone was so flat that no one could tell what Yunjian was thinking at the moment. The boy trembled for a while. He looked up in fear and finally said in a panic, I. At the same time, Yunjian walked towards the boy. She stood not far from the boy, frowned, and asked a question that had nothing to do with this matter. "What's your name?" The boy shyly lowered his head, and his voice was as low as a mosquito's buzz. My name is Lu Haoze." Lu Haoze. Yunjian smiled, the corners of her lips curling into an unreadable smile. Then, she said softly, "I'll remember you." In today's world, there were not many people who knew how to hypnotize, especially this boy who could tell at a glance that she had used hypnotism. It did not matter if he was involved in this aspect, or if it was his family's inheritance, or if he was born with this kind of ability. She, Yunjian, had to get to the bottom of this. Because ever since Yunjian debuted, she had never met anyone who knew how to hypnotize other than the old man. And obviously, it was not convenient for her to ask Lu Haoze these questions in public. Chapter 176. Lu Haoze's cheeks flushed even redder at Yunjian's words. Coupled with his tender skin, it looked like water could be squeezed out of his cheeks. He looked like an adorable little brother, giving Yunjian the feeling of meeting her younger brother in her past life. Although she had only met her biological younger brother once, she could still remember his adorable and shy look. While Yunjian was conversing with Lu Haoze, Zhang Xiaofeng, Chen Sini, and Ling Yichen had almost emptied their plates of barbecued meat. In the end, it was Chen Sini who snatched 10 mutton skewers from Zhang Xiaofeng and Ling Yichen for Yunjian. It was undeniable that Zhang Xiaofeng, Chen Sini, and Ling Yichen's eating speed was top-notch. It only took them a few minutes to finish the dozens of skewers. If there was a foodie competition in Longmen City, the three of them would definitely win the grand prize. "Let's go." Yunjian took a mutton skewer from Chen Sini and finished it. She let the three of them share the remaining 9 skewers equally and led them out of the barbecue shop. Since the sun was shining directly on the ground, those in the chilly autumn breeze could bask in its rays. The owner pulled the curtain of the tent aside. Yunjian and her friends walked out of the barbecue shop and headed for the Ferrari sports car that they could see. Even after the 4 of them got into the car and Yunjian started the engine and sped away, Qin Fenger's friends were still gawking at them in the barbecue shop. It was until someone exclaimed, That's the latest edition of the Ferrari supercar. It's a limited edition of only 3 in the world." As a result, the crowd was alarmed. Qin Fenger's false accusation that Yunjian was a mistress was unraveled. The driver was Yunjian and the car was obviously Yunjian's. The boys really loved famous cars, and all of them looked at it with envy and admiration. Lu Haoze, who was sitting in the corner, also raised his head and looked at Yunjian's car leaving. That cool look reminded him of Yunjian's words, and his pink cheeks instantly flushed red. For the next few days, Yunjian returned to her routine. She wandered back and forth between school, home, and the military training camp. 15 days later, Gu Junjian inspected the results of everyone's training. Yun Jian passed quickly. The result of this inspection was based on the results of the 5 kilograms 5 kilometers cross-country run. Naturally, Yun Jian easily passed. The other 6 also met the standard. 5 days later, the bi-monthly competition came as scheduled. On this day, Gu Junjian stood with his hands clasped behind his back, looking at the 7 of them. He frowned and then relaxed. He finally opened his mouth and said, "This month's assessment competition is cancelled." Ah. So awesome. We don't have to take the assessment this month? Chu Xiangnan winked at Chu Ning and smiled happily. It was obvious that if they did not pass the bi-monthly competition, they would be kicked out of the team. Chu Xiangnan was also the weakest in the group. He had to admit that he barely passed every assessment. How could he not be happy when he heard that the assessment competition was cancelled? Don't celebrate too early. Your assessment is cancelled because the team has received a new mission this time. Gu Yunjian's tone was heavy. He continued, "This mission is very important. It's supposed to be carried out by official Advanced Special Forces soldiers and not you Special Forces candidates. However, it's also a very secretive mission. We can't let the enemy suspect anything during the mission. The members of the Advanced Special Forces are all familiar faces. They're definitely not suitable for this mission. However, you guys are new faces and have never been on a mission before. It's the best decision to let you guys do this. Therefore, I plan to let you guys do your debut mission." As he said this, Gu Junjian became even more serious. "This mission is risky. You guys can choose not to do it." As he said this, Gu Junjian looked at Yun Jian. In fact, other than Yun Jian, the other 6 had been training in the military for more than a year. However, Gu Junjian was not worried about Yun Jian, who had just joined the team. He even put his hopes on Yun Jian. If Yun Jian was willing to take part in this mission, it was guaranteed that it would be completed successfully. Chapter 177. Yun Jian naturally sensed Gu Yunjian's gaze on her and understood the meaning behind his gaze. "I'll go," Yun Jian said in the next second, but it reignited Gu Yunjian's hope. He suddenly smiled. "I'll go too. If a girl like Yun Jian has the courage to go, wouldn't it be embarrassing if I don't go?" Although Chu Xiangnan was the weakest in the group, he did not back down when it came to serious matters. He was the second to speak up without hesitation. The others also expressed their readiness to accept the mission. What was there to be afraid of? Since they had already entered this place and stayed, they had no intention of running away at the last minute. In fact, this group of young people who were candidates for the Special Forces did not only consist of these few people. Later on, many of them left because they could not stand the intensity of the training. Some of them did not pass the assessment and did not have the ability to stay. Hence, after a while, only Chu Ning's group of 6 could endure the hardship and stay. Naturally, their perseverance was incomparable to that of ordinary people. Including Yun Jian, who joined later, there were now a total of 7 of them. Good. Gu Junjian glanced at the group again and immediately showed a hint of admiration in his eyes. Regardless of whether the mission was a success or failure, at least none of them backed down. This bit of spirit was difficult to achieve even for ordinary people who seemed very strong and powerful. The mission will be carried out in a month's time. In other words, you still have a month's worth of training. During this month, I will train you with the intensity of an official Special Forces soldier. Please be prepared. Gu Junjian said sternly. In fact, the mission this time was not urgent. It was a secret mission, and the mission had to be carried out step by step. Gu Junjian set the mission to start in a month. After all, Chu Ning and the others had not experienced actual combat. What he needed to do was to strengthen everyone's physical fitness and strength in a short period of time. Going on a mission was not child's play. If they were not careful, they could be seriously injured or even lose their lives. Hence, they could not afford to be careless. Yes. The 7 of them replied in unison. Remember, during the mission, you are not allowed to use your real names. This is also to prevent unnecessary consequences if the mission fails. So, in the next 15 minutes, each of you will choose a code name for yourself. Remember, this code name will follow you all the way to the end as Special Forces. So, I'll give you 15 minutes to discuss. After 15 minutes, report your code names. Gu Junjian finished speaking in one breath. He glanced at the watch in his hand and noted down the time. Wow, a replacement account. Chu Ning was overjoyed when she heard that. She turned around and asked the others, "What kind of codenames are you guys going to use?" "Of course it has to be super domineering." Chu Xiangnan rolled his eyes at Chu Ning. However, no one reported their codenames first. 15 minutes later, Gu Junjian glanced at his watch and said, "Time's up. Now, report your code names from left to right." From left to right, that was to say, from the boys. The order of the people standing from left to right was Hong Fan, Fang Xiaoran, Lu Shiyun, Chu Xiangnan, Jiang Weiwei, Chu Ning, and Yun Jian. After Gu Junjian finished speaking, everyone reported their code names according to the order they came up with. Hong Fan said, "Dark Night." Fang Xiaoran said, "Red Flame." Lu Shiyun said, "Nirvana." Chu Xiangnan said, "Thunder." Jiang Weiwei said, "Haitang." When it was Chu Ning's turn, she could not help but burst out laughing when she heard Chu Xiangnan's code name. Chu Xiangnan was an idiot. How could he have the cheek to use such a domineering code name? This code name did not match his strength at all. However, Chu Ning immediately straightened her face and said the code name she had thought of. Momo. After saying that, Chu Ning turned to look at Yun Jian excitedly. "Yun Jian, it's your turn." The group of people wanted to know what code name Yun Jian would use. Even Gu Junjian turned to look at Yun Jian. Yun Jian's lips twitched as she uttered faintly, "Killing God." When he first heard these 2 words, Gu Junjian's entire body trembled. Chapter 178. Lu Shiyun was also the son of a military family. Since young, he had been able to keep a cool head. He was the oldest among the group. He was already 20 years old and was currently in university. It was because of Lu Shiyun's cool head that Gu Junjian made him the leader of the 7-man team. Even someone like Lu Shiyun, who had never been flustered, was shocked when he heard Yun Jian's code name. One could only imagine how the others would react. In reality, the few of them knew about the people on the assassin and secret agent leaderboard. They were not ordinary students but candidates for the special forces. They had to know about these people on the secret agent and assassin leaderboard. They even planned to stay as far away from these people as possible even after they officially became special forces. Just when everyone's attention was on Yun Jian explained, "I'm talking about slashing God." Slashing means killing. With this explanation, everyone's tensed hearts finally calmed down. However, Yun Jian was so young. If she was really slaying God, who was on the secret agent leaderboard, how could she be here? Gu Junjian frowned before relaxing his brows. He took a few more glances at Yun Jian before looking away solemnly. Slaying God and slaying God. Their code names were so similar and they sounded the same. Moreover, Yun Jian had killed Wolf Blade, who was ranked 10th on the assassin leaderboard. Was it really a coincidence that Yun Jian came up with this code name? Ah, it's just a code name. It's just a coincidence. Alright, it's decided on the code names. Chu Xiangnan had no idea how shocked Gu Junjian and the rest were earlier. Instead, he stepped forward to adjust the atmosphere like a peacemaker. Cough, cough. Alright, since you've decided on your code names, let's start the training. Gu Junjian, who had been silent all this while, interrupted them. It was actually very strenuous to increase their training intensity to that of a normal special forces training. However, there was no time to do that now. First of all, in the 5,000-meter cross-country run every day, everyone changed from carrying 5 kilograms to fully armed with more than 20 kilograms. In other words, he had to carry something that weighed more than 20 kilograms while running. This training was just a basic training for an ordinary Special Forces soldier. After all, as an official Special Forces soldier, he would carry firearms and equipment on his back when he went out on a mission, which was this full set of equipment. Adding up all the things that should be brought along, the total weight was only about 20 kilograms. At the end of the day, other than Yun Jian, the rest of them were already aching all over. They couldn't even stand up straight. A few days later, Yun Jian asked for a week's leave from Gu Junjian. As a top student of the school, she was sent abroad for a week's study. Gu Junjian was not worried about Yun Jian's skills, so he agreed to Yun Jian's request for a week's leave. On this morning, the sun had just risen and a cool breeze blew past. Yun Jian only carried an old school bag that Qin Yiru had helped her tidy up. She stood at the entrance of Songshan's first high school with Chen Sini. This time, Longmen First High School only had 5 spots for the study. Other than Yun Jian and Chen Sini, the other 3 were already there. Songshan's first high school was the organizer this time. Yun Jian and the rest boarded the plane with Songshan's first high school. After waiting for a while at the entrance of Songshan's first high school, Yun Jian saw a familiar tall and handsome figure walk out of the school. Chapter 179. Yin Yi had long known that his younger sister would be representing the school to participate in this overseas study activity, but he could not help looking forward to it when he thought that he could go overseas with his sister today. Striding with his long legs and a sweet smile on his handsome face, Yin Yi walked toward Yun Jian. "Xiao Jian, you're here?" Yun Jian nodded and pointed at Chen Sini beside her, introducing her. "Gu, this is my friend, Chen Sini." This was the first time Yun Jian had introduced her as a friend in front of others, so Chen Sini could not help feeling a little excited. In fact, Yun Jian had already treated Chen Sini as a friend after spending so much time together. It was just that this was his first time saying it out loud. "Hi, I'm Chen Sini. You must be Jianjian's brother? Nice to meet you." Chen Sini introduced herself to Yun Yi with a chuckle, looking at his handsome face. Nice to meet you." Yun Yi nodded, his short, handsome hair bobbing. "Students, are you all ready? Come and gather on the bus, we're leaving." The tutor standing at the entrance of DE Senior High School waved and called out in a sweet voice. The tutor who was leading the students overseas this time had the surname Ding. She was a female tutor who looked as sweet as her voice. She did not look old, between 20 to 25 years old. There were 2 tutors leading the team. The other tutor had the surname Kong, so she would call him Tutor Kong for the time being. "Let's go over too," Yun Yi said to Yun Jian and Chen Sini with a flick of her short hair as she glanced in that direction. Yun Jian and Chen Sini nodded in unison. Su Haokol did not come this time. Those who came were the top students in their respective schools with excellent English proficiency. Even those who were good in their studies but lacking in English did not get a turn, so it was not hard to imagine that Su Haokol did not get a turn. Since Su Haokol was not with Yun Yi, he was the happiest that his younger sister could come. The group boarded the bus quickly, and after a few hours of bumpy ride, they arrived at the provincial airport and boarded the flight to Country Y. The overseas study destination was an advanced school in Country Y. It was called Yana High School. Yana High School was a continuous secondary and senior high school. Its educational standard was one of the best in the world. The name of Yana High School was derived from the name of its first headmistress. Since its establishment, Yana High School had a history of several hundred years. Its regional culture was also very profound. At the entrance of Yana High School entrance. "Wow, Jian, this is the famous Yana High School. It's a century-old school that lives up to its name. Look, just the entrance alone is already something our school can't compare to." Chen Sini was the first to get off the bus, holding Yun Jian's hand in excitement. 80% of those who graduated from Yana High School and passed the Gaokao from the world's renowned universities had a graduation rate, making Yana High School one of the best in the world. After Tutor Ding and Tutor Kong communicated with Yana High School's foreign tutor, they interrupted the students' excited shouts. No matter how good-tempered a person was, they would not be able to accept being pushed for no reason, let alone Chinsini. After Chinsini stood up, she turned her head and shouted angrily at the girl who had just pushed her, "Why did you push me?" Chinsini's tone carried a hint of anger. Unexpectedly, the girl rolled her eyes at Chinsini. She flipped her hair and showed a disgusted expression at Chinsini on her horrifying face with white powder makeup. On the contrary, the girl confidently complained to Chinsini, "It's your fault for taking the bed that I wanted." The reason she had pushed her was very simple. It was because Chinsini had taken a liking to the bed that she wanted. Chapter 181. This is the bed you wanted? This isn't your house. Besides, I didn't know you wanted this bed. Are you crazy? Chinsini was not a good-tempered person. Naturally, she was more aggrieved than anyone else when she was pushed for no reason. She took it upon herself to shout back at the girl. This girl's name was Lu Xiuxiu. She looked quite pure, but unfortunately, the colorful makeup on her face covered up her purity, making her look a little strange. Lu Xiuxiu had a philosophy since she was young. If she wanted something, she wouldn't allow others to take it away. Chinsini's actions seemed to have disobeyed her. She was about to hit her and scolded her. "You're the crazy one. Your whole family is crazy. I want this bed, so it's mine. I don't need any reason. You." Lu Xiuxiu wanted to hit Chinsini, but she was stopped by the other girl who ran in. The girl stopped in front of Lu Xiuxiu and Chinsini. She said to Lu Xiuxiu, "Xiuxiu, don't be like this. They were the ones who chose these beds first. We came in late anyway." The girl turned around and smiled awkwardly at Chinsini and Yunjian. "I'm sorry. Xiuxiu has always been like this. Please don't hold it against her." Seeing how sincere the girl was, Chinsini did not intend to continue the conversation. She turned to pick the other two beds with Yunjian and tidied up her belongings. "TSK. Who do you think you are?" Lu Xiuxiu was stopped by the girl, but she glared at Chinsini and Yunjian. She remembered it. Lu Xiuxiu was a top student in No. 1 high school. However, the most annoying thing about her was that she considered herself to be the most outstanding student in the first year of high school, so she was indifferent to others. She even felt that others should be her slaves and deserved to be her stepping stones. The girl who came to mediate was called Tong Yulan. Tong Yulan's grades were excellent. She wasn't an ordinary person since she could enter No. 1 high school. However, she was only above average in No. 1 high school, which was full of top students. Her only outstanding subject was English. She and Lu Xiuxiu were classmates, but they weren't friends. However, Lu Xiuxiu was willing to do her a favor. If it weren't for the two of them going abroad, Tong Yulan wouldn't want to be with someone like Lu Xiuxiu. This annoying quarrel didn't end. Lu Xiuxiu's favorite thing to do was to take advantage of others. Since she had her eyes on Yunjian and Chinsini, there would be consequences. At this moment, Lu Xiuxiu didn't know what it meant to not die if one didn't seek death. Of course, this was a story for later. After Chinsini and Yunjian tidied up the room, they went downstairs to gather. Teacher Maki was waiting for them downstairs. When Yunjian and the rest went downstairs, they saw Yun-Yi and some other students from Country Z waiting for them. However, there were 5 or 6 foreign students standing in the middle. They were about the same age as the rest. The atmosphere wasn't very harmonious. At this moment, the fair-skinned foreign student standing in the middle mocked them in glib English. "You little brats from Country Z look so skinny and weak. You're just like a wooden stick." As he spoke, the foreign student gestured with his firm muscles and mocked, "This is the spirit a real man should have." Chapter 182. The foreign male student's name was Charlie Lawson. Lawson was a very naughty boy who loved to tease his teacher. Now that he saw Yun-Yi and the others, he was even more interested in teasing and ridiculing them without holding back. The foreign male student standing next to Lawson, who was led by Lawson, heard him and laughed mockingly. Their actions made teacher Maki feel even more awkward and helpless. Your muscles are really big and you look very manly. Just as Yun-Yi and the others were clenching their fists and gnashing their teeth at Lawson, Yun-Jian's beautiful voice was heard. She spoke in perfect English, which stunned everyone present. Everyone was shocked by Yun-Jian's perfect English and they were all dumbfounded. The students from Country Z were even more enraged. Yun-Jian actually praised Lawson. Lawson's words were not just directed at them. What he meant was that he was scolding all the people from Country Z. Yun-Jian was actually helping outsiders. Yun-Yi was also stunned, but he knew that his sister would not slander her own people. When Lawson heard Yun-Jian's praise, he laughed out loud and almost lamented that his charm could make the other party's woman fall for him. Yun-Jian's leisurely words were heard again. It's a pity that although your muscles are big, they're flashy without substance. You only look strong on the outside, but you don't have real strength. You're just a joke. Yun-Jian's words were very calm, but there was an element of surprise in the calmness. The students from Country Z were in awe of Yun-Jian at once. While praising the other party, she also gave him a critical blow. Yun-Jian's way of doing things was so satisfying. What? At the same time, Lawson's expression changed drastically. He was so angry that his face instantly turned pale. Lawson was infuriated that a little girl had slandered him as someone who was flashy but had no substance and was all talk and no substance. Didn't you hear me clearly? Yun-Jian blinked her beautiful eyes and continued, I was just joking with you. It was meant to be a taunt, but coming from Yun-Jian's mouth, it sounded like she was speaking innocently and innocently. Even so, Lawson was so angry that his face turned green. Good job. Lawson gritted his teeth and glared at Yun-Jian. He then said in an extremely provocative tone, since you said that I'm flashy and that my muscles are just for show, then if you have the guts, let one of you fight me. When Lawson mentioned a match, he actually meant a fight. The teachers in Country Y didn't object to students fighting, so Ms. Maki didn't stop them. No problem, Yun-Jian replied with her arms crossed. Her frivolous gaze made Lawson even angrier. Come on. Yun-Jian hooked her pinky finger at Lawson. Yun-Jian meant that she was going to fight Lawson? A group of students from Z Country who were also here to further their studies widened their eyes in disbelief. Although Yun-Jian's actions were satisfying, what about her? How was she going to fight Lawson? Putting aside the fact that girls were not as strong as boys, Lawson was at least 1.9 meters tall. Compared to Yun-Jian, the difference was huge. In addition, Lawson had a big and muscular body. Yun-Jian would probably be sent flying with one punch. Lawson was stunned. After he recovered, his disdain returned to his eyes and he chuckled. You can't, I'm a man. I don't fight with women. We'll only know if I can win after we fight. Yun-Jian suddenly narrowed her eyes. After she finished speaking, she ran towards Lawson like a flash of lightning. In the next second, she was next to Lawson. With a flip of her hand, she grabbed Lawson's arm and kicked him horizontally. At the same time, her small arms circled around Lawson's back. Then, Yun-Jian lifted Lawson up and with a somersault, she threw Lawson to the ground. One move. Lawson didn't even recover from his shock. When Lawson landed on the ground with a loud thud, everyone came back to their senses. At this time, Lawson had been thrown to the ground by Yun-Jian. The scene was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Chapter 183. While everyone was still in shock, Yun-Jian's indifferent yet sarcastic voice was heard again. TSK. You can't even beat me, what right do you have to fight the guys from Country Z? Yun-Jian's words completely humiliated Lawson, who was lying on the ground. However, Chen Sini, who was standing far away, almost tripped when she heard Yun-Jian's words. Yun-Jian was someone who had killed the top 10 assassins in the international assassin rankings. Who here could beat her? However, from Yun-Jian's words, it sounded like Lawson could not even beat a girl, let alone a guy. In other words, he was even worse than a girl. Chen Sini did not expect Yunjian to have the ability to lie through her teeth. She covered her mouth and snickered at the side. That's right. Foreigner, you can't even beat a girl from country Z, what right do you have to fight us? Ha ha ha, the surrounding guys started to jeer along with Yunjian's words. Their blood was boiling and they were suddenly in awe of Yunjian. Lawson struggled to get up from the ground and stood up in pain. Yunjian did not hit him hard just now, so he could still stand up on his own. After standing up, Lawson looked at Yunjian with his sinister eyes. He pointed at Yunjian and said indignantly, "That was a sneak attack. Despicable. Despicable. You want to fight me again?" Yunjian narrowed her eyes and a murderous aura surged from her skinny body. This murderous aura made Lawson freeze. He trembled from the bottom of his heart. Although Lawson was a mischievous person, he knew his limits. He knew that Yunjian had hit him hard just now. Even if he used all his strength, he would still end up in the same state. He said that Yunjian had attacked him sneakily just to save his face. Now that Yunjian wanted to fight him again, Lawson naturally would not agree to it. "No, since you guys are guests from Country Z, we shouldn't fight and kill. We should compete in something else," Lawson said as he wiped the cold sweat on his face with his sleeve. How despicable. Everyone felt a wave of mockery in their hearts. Lawson could not beat Yunjian, so he wanted to compete in something else. How could he make it sound so nice? If he did not want to fight and kill, how could he fight Yunjian just now? Anytime. Yunjian crossed her arms and looked at Lawson with a frivolous gaze. He wanted to compete in something else? She would fight him to the end. Just because of Lawson's disdainful words, she would let him know what it meant to be inferior to others in everything. Comparisons were odious. When Yunjian was slaying God, she had come in contact with everything. Assassination, explosives, heavy weapons, car racing, computer programming, and so on. As long as it was mentioned, there was nothing that she was not involved in. Lawson suddenly curled his lips into a sinister and terrifying smile. "All right, let's compete in computer skills. How about that?" He knew that in 1998, there were very few computer classes in schools in Country Z, computers were not popularized yet and Yunjian and the rest did not even know what a computer was. Now that their school had started to offer computer classes, he definitely had a huge advantage in this aspect. Therefore, he wanted to compete in computer skills with Yunjian. As soon as Lawson said that, the people around him became even angrier. "That's despicable. Foreigner, how shameless can you be?" Someone shouted. Most of the students from Country Z had just come into contact with computers. Some of them had not even touched a computer before. How could Lawson suggest this? Wasn't this clearly using his advantage to bully others? "All right, computer skills. No problem." Just then, Yunjian's leisurely voice echoed throughout the crowd. Chapter 184. Listening to Lawson and Yunjian's conversation, Miss Maki and the other students could not even get a word in edgewise. In the end, they could only watch as Lawson led the team to Yana High School's computer room. As a native of Country Y, Miss Maki did not object to the little competition between students from both countries. Thus, the group headed to the computer room. Yuni walked beside Yunjian while Chensini followed on Yunjian's left. "Xiao Jian, you know how to operate a computer?" Yuni was worried about this, so he went closer to his younger sister and asked in a low voice. "Don't worry, brother." Yunjian did not explain further, merely smiling with her eyes squinted. Hearing Yunjian's words, Yuni did not ask further despite his worry. Ever since he returned home to celebrate his mother's birthday that week, his younger sister had changed. She was becoming less and less like his younger sister. It was undeniable that he liked his younger sister even more now. Country-wise Yana High School was an internationally renowned high school with a middle and high school section. There was a computer lesson in Yana High School's curriculum as well. When the group came to the computer classroom, even the more affluent students who had computers at home were surprised by the rows of computers in the classroom. There were so many computers here. They had never seen a computer room with so many computers, so they could not help exclaiming. Yun Jian was the only one who was unfazed by the rows of computers in the room. In fact, computers were about to be popularized in Country Z in 1998. Some of the elite schools in Country Z had already started offering computer classes. Longmen City was still developing rapidly, but it was not far from offering computer classes. Humph, little brat from Country Z, you're so short-sighted. Lawson could not help but laugh coldly when he saw this. There was an indescribable sense of ridicule in his words. In spite of it, no one paid any attention to Lawson's grumbling, so he gave up. The computer room here was open. None of the computers were turned off. They were all turned on. This made it convenient for Yana High School students and teachers, as they could use the computers here anytime they wanted. Since the computers were turned on, the students and teachers did not have to wait for the computers to turn on even if they wanted to use them for a while. Lawson glanced at Yun Jian from the corner of his eyes and said in a mocking tone, "Ha, please." Yun Jian ignored Lawson's sarcasm and went to a computer under everyone's gaze and sat on the bench. Lawson followed suit and sat in front of the computer beside Yun Jian. "What are we competing on?" Yun Jian held the mouse and scrolled up and down and pressed on the keyboard twice before turning to ask Lawson. "We're competing to see who's faster." Lawson chuckled. Chapter 185. Pfft. Foreigner, don't go too far. You're shameless. Why are you picking your own specialty to compete with us? Someone shouted at Lawson as he could not stand it anymore. What's wrong? Don't tell me that no one in Country Z knows how to hack such a simple computer program? Lawson was not afraid of that. He fought back even more boldly. As soon as Lawson said that, the group of friends with him began to murmur. The students from Country Z were instantly enraged. However, everyone understood that Yun Jian did not know how to hack a computer program. Manipulating other people's computers, isn't this something that only hackers can do? Of course I know how to do it. Just as everyone was getting anxious, Yun Jian smiled gently. Hee, then I'll start first. Lawson could not wait to show off his talent. Hearing the adoration from the people around him, he opened his mouth to speak. Yun Jian crossed her arms. She did not touch the computer. Instead, she signaled to Lawson, "You can start." Then, Lawson reached out his hand and started typing on the computer keyboard. Lawson's speed at operating the computer was not considered fast. However, in the eyes of the group of students, they had to admit that he did have some skills. After about 30 minutes, Lawson finally operated his computer and created a program. He then linked it to the computer ID and pressed the "Yes" button on the screen that popped up. The computer in front of Yun Jian was controlled remotely by Lawson. Lawson opened the whiteboard. At the same time, the computer in front of Yun Jian was controlled by Lawson to open the whiteboard. Lawson drew a pig's head on the whiteboard. The image of a pig's head appeared on Yun Jian's computer. When the people around saw this, they could not help but be surprised that Lawson actually knew how to hack and control Yun Jian's computer. He actually drew a pig's head on his computer and could control Yun Jian's computer to do the same thing as his computer. For the sake of the atmosphere, Lawson's mischievous friends even clapped their hands. "Lawson, good job. You're the pride of Country Y." A naughty boy echoed. On the other hand, the students from Country Z all had cold expressions on their faces. They had to admit that Lawson was indeed very powerful, but at the same time, they couldn't help but feel angry. The actions of Lawson and his friends were undoubtedly mocking Country Z for having no one. Mocking them for being pigs. Is that all? At this moment, Yun Jian raised her eyebrows. Her pleasant voice echoed throughout the hall, and at the same time, it ruined Lawson's complacency. "What do you mean?" Lawson's expression changed abruptly. Then, he taunted, "If you know how to do it, then do it." Lawson was certain that even if Yun Jian knew how to use computers and had touched them before, she wouldn't know how to operate someone else's computer. This was hacking technology. Would she? How could she? Even for himself, it took him 5 years to learn hacking skills from his uncle before he was able to achieve what he had today. Hacking technology wasn't that easy to learn. Just as Lawson was secretly criticizing Yunjian, he saw Yunjian stretch out her fair hands. Her tender fingers touched the keyboard. Then, Yunjian played with her fingers. Her fingers tapped on the keyboard quickly and nimbly. She only pressed 3 keys on the keyboard, and the computer controlled by Lawson returned to normal. Then, Yunjian's fingers tapped on the keyboard faster and faster. In just 10 breaths. Beep beep beep, a rapid beep was heard. Then, everyone saw that all the computers in the computer room were controlled by Yunjian's computer. She controlled all the computers in 10 seconds. Everyone looked at Yunjian in horror. However, the shock wasn't over yet. Not long after, a teacher ran in from the door and shouted in perfect English, "My God, what's wrong with the mainframe network here? Why did all the computers in the school suddenly go out of control?" After hearing that, everyone turned to look at Yunjian, who was sitting in front of the computer table leisurely. Chapter 186. The teacher who ran in was giving a computer lesson to her classmates next door. In the end, all the computer programs were paralyzed at that time. Every computer's screen suddenly turned black and could not be restored no matter how hard she clicked on it. She thought that there was a problem with the computers in her classroom, but when she ran around the entire building, she realized that all the computers were paralyzed. The broadband in this open computer room controlled the entire school's network, so she ran in. The teacher did not know that her words caused a huge uproar in everyone's ears. "No, it's impossible." How is this possible?" Lawson smiled bitterly as he stood up and shook his head desperately. How was this possible? Even his uncle, a top-notch hacker, could not take control of all the computers in Yana High School in just 10 seconds. 10 seconds, what did that mean? Lawson suddenly recalled that his uncle had told him about a person. That person was the top hacker in the world. No one knew her identity, but she was skilled in hacking. As long as she had a computer, she could do anything. She could even easily hack into the system of a top multinational company and completely destroy the other party's software in less than 10 seconds. Yunjian's methods were 80% similar to the person Lawson's uncle had mentioned. You. Lawson suddenly pointed at Yunjian and shook his head. Impossible, how can you be that person? Lawson's strange behavior shocked everyone present. Yunjian narrowed her eyes and supported her chin with her hand. She looked at Lawson and suddenly revealed a strange smile. Lawson's aura immediately deflated and he became completely silent. The group of people around them were shocked and even looked at Yunjian in horror. In the end, Lawson lowered his eyes as if he had lost all his arrogance. When he looked up at Yunjian again, his eyes were no longer as aggressive as before. "You win," Lawson said to Yunjian. Lawson's words made the students from Country Z scream in excitement. Yana High School was an international school, so they came here to study. However, the students of Yana High School had always looked down on them. It was because they came here to learn from a top-notch famous school. It could be considered as them paying respect to the other party. On the other hand, Yunjian's actions just now had viciously regained face for their school, and even for all the Z's citizens. It wasn't as if Country Z didn't have people. "Jian, you're amazing." Chen Sini ran to Yunjian gleefully and gave her a thumbs up. Yunjian just smiled. What Yunjian didn't expect was that Lawson and the others were in awe of her ever since she showed off her computer skills by controlling all the computers. But that was also true. In this world, the winner was the king, and the loser was the bandit. In the following days, Yunjian and the others studied and attended classes with the students of Yana High School. This was what advanced studies were all about. Everyone was here to experience the process of attending a foreign high school. At the same time, everyone here spoke English. Although Yin-Yi, Chen Sini, and the others' pronunciation was not standard, they could still communicate with the people in country Y. In the blink of an eye, it was almost the end of the week's advanced studies. To send off Yunjian and her friends from country Z, Miss Maki held a small farewell party in a KTV. Teacher Maki had booked a large KTV room. At this moment, everyone was happily gathered here. Yunjian sat on the side as well while Chinsini stood in the center with a microphone and sang loudly. No one saw Lu Xiuxiu, who sat in the corner with a strange smile on her face. She poured a packet of powder into a glass of red wine and stirred it twice. Chapter 187. Lu Xiuxiu poured a second glass of red wine and added the same condiments after adding the first glass of red wine. After doing all this, she pretended to be very hesitant and sat in place to wait for a while. Xiuxiu, don't just sit there. Come and play with the rest. Tong Yulan walked over to Lu Xiuxiu out of kindness when she saw her sitting alone in the corner. All the students were currently circling around Yunjian. Lu Xiuxiu, on the other hand, was sitting alone in the corner. Tong Yulan walked over to Lu Xiuxiu out of kindness. She didn't know that Lu Xiuxiu was waiting for her to say that. Yulan, Lu Xiuxiu pretended to look at Yunjian awkwardly and said to Tong Yulan with tears in her eyes, I was so rude to those two junior sisters a few days ago. I can't stand it. Yulan, you know that I'm a soft-hearted person with a sharp tongue. Tong Yulan knew that Lu Xiuxiu had quarreled with Chinsini a few days ago. Now that so many people were flattering Yunjian and Yunjian was Chinsini's good friend, Lu Xiuxiu felt embarrassed. Lu Xiuxiu must be too embarrassed to walk over to play with the others. Xiuxiu, it's okay. Those two junior sisters are very kind. I even spoke to them just now. If you apologize, they'll definitely forgive you. Tong Yulan thought that Lu Xiuxiu was really going to reconcile with Chinsini and Yunjian, so she quickly helped her. Lu Xiuxiu rolled her eyes at Tong Yulan in disdain. She secretly cursed Tong Yulan for hooking up with Chinsini and Yunjian behind her back. However, Lu Xiuxiu pretended to be harmless. She blinked her eyes and tried to squeeze out tears. Yulan, how about this? I have 2 glasses of red wine here. Give them to the 2 girls. If they agree to drink it, I'll apologize to them in person. Lu Xiuxiu pushed the 2 glasses of red wine to Tong Yulan as she spoke. Don't tell them that I poured the red wine for them. I'm afraid that they won't drink it if they find out. Lu Xiuxiu was afraid that Tong Yulan would say that, so she continued. Because I feel that if I apologize to them after they drink the red wine I poured for them, the chances of them forgiving me will be higher. Don't you think so, Yulan? Tong Yulan was intimidated by Lu Xiuxiu. She really thought that Lu Xiuxiu was going to apologize sincerely. Good. Then it's settled, Xiuxiu. Tong Yulan thought that Lu Xiuxiu had changed, so she quickly took the 2 glasses of red wine and ran towards Yunjian and Chinsini. At this moment, Lu Xiuxiu revealed a strange smile. She took out her phone from her trouser pocket and sent a text message to an account. Are you ready? I'll call them out later. You guys block them at the door. Capture him for me. Yunjian had already sensed that the pair of eyes in the corner had been staring at her and Chinsini for a long time. Until Tong Yulan came over with 2 glasses of red wine and handed them to Yunjian and Chinsini. Junior sisters, you must be tired, right? I poured the red wine for you. Have a sip. Tong Yulan's innocent look was hard to reject. Yunjian and Chinsini picked up the glasses of red wine. Chinsini finished it in one gulp. Chapter 188. There was a concoction in the glass of red wine. Yunjian could smell it just now. What kind of poison had she not eaten when she was slaying God in her previous life? She was immune to all poisons since a long time ago. However, Yunjian had already noticed that her current body was the same as her body in her previous life. Yunjian had already noticed this when she was in Xinjiang town. However, the concoction in the glass of red wine was not strong. It would only make one feel dizzy and weak after drinking it. Of course, it was ineffective on Yunjian. Yunjian did not think that Tong Yulan had purposely poured the red wine for her and Chen Sini to drink. She glanced sideways and caught a glimpse of Lu Xiuxiu, who was observing the situation from a corner not far away. It seemed like someone had a death wish. She would play along with her then. The farewell banquet continued. Tong Yulan followed Lu Xiuxiu's instructions and made Yunjian and Chen Sini drink the red wine. She then ran to Lu Xiuxiu. Xiuxiu, they've drunk the red wine. Can you apologize now? Tong Yulan naively thought that Lu Xiuxiu would really apologize. Yulan, thank you. Lu Xiuxiu pretended to thank Tong Yulan sincerely. She then lowered her voice and said to Tong Yulan. Yulan, it's not good for me to apologize in front of everyone, right? Can you get the two of them outside, please? We can come in together after we've reconciled. This isn't a good thing after all. I'll be embarrassed if everyone knows about it. No problem. Tong Yulan was thinking that she had done a great job if Lu Xiuxiu could apologize to the two juniors. She gestured an okay with her hand and turned to run to Yunjian and Chen Sini. Yunjian had seen Tong Yulan and Lu Xiuxiu's interaction, but she did not make a sound. At this time, Chen Sini was so weak that she couldn't exert any strength. Because she had drunk some wine just now, her cheeks were red and she was a little drunk. She felt like her soul had been turned upside down. Can you guys come out with me for a while? I want to talk to you guys in private. Tong Yulan was excited when she ran over. She couldn't wait to ask Chen Sini and Yunjian to go out with her to see Lu Xiuxiu. Then, Lu Xiuxiu apologized to them and they reconciled. Oh, sure. Although Chen Sini was a little drunk, she could still understand Tong Yulan's words and agreed immediately. Yunjian also agreed. The three of them opened the door of the KTV and walked out. Because it was common for people to go to the bathroom, Yunjian and the others did not attract much attention when they went out. Only Yuni glanced at Yunjian and the other two. She didn't think it was inappropriate. After all, no matter how hard she thought about it, he would never think that someone would plot against his sister. On the other hand, his sister was so powerful. If someone wanted to harm her, they had to have the ability to do so. When Yunjian and the others opened the door of the KTV and took 2 steps out, a few tall and strong men rushed towards them before Lu Xiuxiu arrived. You. Tong Yulan was shocked. She had just opened her mouth when the group of men covered her mouth. The word "you" was completely obliterated by the noise of the KTV. The men ran over and tied up Yunjian, Chen Sini, and Tong Yulan swiftly. They covered their mouths with black tape and ran away with them. Chapter 189. These men were obviously trained and most likely specialized in this line of work. Hence, they were very experienced. Yunjian didn't resist and the men tied her hands and feet easily. Yunjian and the other 2 girls couldn't make a sound because their mouths were covered with black tape. They were dragged out of the KTV. Even if there were passers-by who saw them, they wouldn't help them. After all, no one wanted to get into trouble. After dragging Yunjian and the other 2 girls out of the KTV, the men threw them into a van and drove away. Everything seemed to be done stealthily, but in fact, there were many loopholes. Oh. Tong Yulan widened her eyes in horror. She was terrified. She had brought Chen Sini and Yunjian to look for Lu Xiuxiu at the entrance so that Lu Xiuxiu could apologize to the 2 girls. What was going on now? Why would someone kidnap them? He had to admit that Tong Yulan was very naive and stupid. Until now, she still hadn't connected the dots. Shut up. One of the men shouted at Tong Yulan when he saw her struggling. He spoke in Chinese. These men were from country Z. Tong Yulan was frightened when the man shouted at her. She had never seen such a scene before. She was so scared that tears flowed down her cheeks. On the other hand, Chen Sini didn't make a sound. She didn't show any panic or fear. Yunjian, on the other hand, looked calm and relaxed. She didn't look like she was being kidnapped but was taking a ride in the car. The van quickly turned around countless corners and stopped in a gloomy wilderness. Capture all of them. The man who shouted at Tong Yulan just now seemed to be the leader of the group. He ordered his men. Then, Yun Jian and the other two girls were pushed down from the van. Yun Jian and the other two girls stood in a row. The burly leader dug his nose and waved his hand. The other two burly men next to him tore off the black tape covering the trio's mouths one after another. Who are you guys? Tong Yulan widened her eyes and sobbed in fear. Who are we? Ha ha ha. We're here to *CK you guys up. The man laughed out loud and sized up Yun Jian and the other two girls. Yun Jian, Chen Sini, and Tong Yulan had exquisite looks. They were so beautiful that they had their own advantages. Moreover, they had exquisite figures and slim figures. The coarse man and his group were itching just by looking at it. You can't do this. We have no grudges. Tong Yulan was already sobbing. No grudges? Ha, little sister, you can only blame yourself for trusting others too easily. Originally, you weren't part of our plan, but since you're here, you're out of luck today. The coarse man said as he unbuckled the belt around his waist. The man's words had a deeper meaning. Initially, they only wanted to catch Yun Jian and Chen Sini. However, in order to prevent Tong Yulan from telling on them, they caught her as well. Big brother, the camera is ready. A man with squinting eyes reported to the man. He was even looking at Yun Jian and the other two girls lecherously. Huh, you're in charge of filming the entire process. I want the one in the middle. You guys decide what to do with the other two. The man stared at Yun Jian. He unbuckled his belt and walked toward Yun Jian. He looked extremely perverted. Yun Jian's looks were the most exquisite among the three of them. Are you sure you want me? Yun Jian raised her brow and asked the man in return. The man was stunned. Clearly, he did not expect Yun Jian to not be afraid. However, he did not think too much about it. Instead, he walked toward Yun Jian with a sneaky smile. Little beauty, it's you. You can't escape. I took a liking to you today because of your... Before he could say the word honor, the man suddenly stopped in his tracks. He had already taken off his pants. Right now, he was only wearing his underwear. The reason why he stopped in his tracks was that Yun Jian removed the ropes that tied her hands and feet and stood up. Chapter 190. No one saw that Yun Jian had just flipped her hands behind her back, and a blade appeared in her hands. She cut the rope with the blade, and the weak rope broke. Are you talking about this? Yun Jian stood up with an evil smile. She picked up the rope that was tied to her, but she cut it with one hand. You tied it too loosely, and it broke by itself. Yun Jian blinked and raised her eyebrows. After saying that, she threw the rope directly to where the coarse man and the others were. Tied it too loosely? How was that possible? The coarse man exclaimed. Just now, he was afraid that they would break free from the rope, so when he was in the car, he deliberately checked the tightness of the rope. Even if it was a bull, it wouldn't be able to break free from the rope, let alone the drugged Yun Jian. How did she do it? Obviously, the coarse man and the others all thought that Yun Jian and Chen Sini were drugged. Even if they had the strength of a bull, their bodies would definitely be weak at this time. But why didn't Yun Jian have any trace of being drugged? Now, it's time to settle our accounts. Yun Jian clasped her hands together, and the bones of her two hands made a crisp "ge" sound. The coarse man and the others were frightened when they heard it. Hee, so what if you broke free from the rope? The coarse man and the others quickly realized that Yun Jian was just a little girl. So what if she wasn't drugged? So what if she broke free from the rope? Could it be that they, a group of big men, couldn't beat this little girl? The coarse man secretly cursed. After he took turns with the three of them, he would record a video and send it to Lu Xiuxiu, and then he would receive a commission. So, what did it mean even if Yunjian untied herself? Little beauty, if you know what's good for you, then come over yourself. Big brother promises to treat you well. Otherwise, Big brother will make you regret being born. The coarse man rubbed his hands and smiled evilly. The coarse man didn't know that his words touched Yunjian's bottom line. Yunjian had never been a soft-hearted person. She could not accept that this boorish man was using words to flirt with her. More importantly, would slaying God regret being born? It had been a long time since she had heard such interesting words. The last person who said this had already gone to hell. The grass on his grave should be 10 feet tall. Yunjian admitted that she might try to keep a low profile in Longmen City or in school. However, once she left country Z, she could no longer keep a low profile. Heh. Yunjian snorted softly. Her sudden outburst of hostility made the coarse man feel a chill run down his spine. However, due to his pride as a man, he still stood in the same spot and proudly raised his neck. After Yunjian spoke, she suddenly walked towards the coarse man. She walked very slowly, but it made people feel frightened. The coarse man gulped subconsciously. What are you doing? Since you like doing this so much, I'll cripple you. Yunjian narrowed her eyes. When she came to the coarse man, she suddenly picked up her pace. While the coarse man was still in a daze, Yunjian sent him flying with a kick. At the same time, she flung out a shiny dagger. Everyone was stunned by the dagger that she had conjured out of nowhere. In the next second, the coarse man's heart-wrenching scream rang in everyone's hearts. Ah! 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 Mine! Mine! Everyone turned around and saw the burly man clutching his crotch. His crotch was covered in dark red blood. Seeing this, the men present clamped their thighs together. Chapter 191. Yunjian's dagger pierced through the vulgar man's genitals. She wanted him to die without any descendants. The men who were with the vulgar man all looked at Yunjian in horror. There was no longer any desire for a beauty in their eyes. Instead, it was as if they had seen a devil. No, Yunjian was the devil. As for what Yunjian said, no one dared to doubt her anymore. We were wrong. We were wrong. Please spare our lives, heroine. The first to beg for mercy was the man who had prepared the camera and was in charge of recording the video. The moment the man begged for mercy, the surrounding men who were working under the vulgar man also started begging for mercy. What a joke. Even the vulgar man was kicked away by Yunjian and cut off his genitals with a swing of the dagger. He didn't even have a chance to struggle. They weren't fools. If they didn't beg for mercy now, did they really want to wait for their genitals to be cut off and die without any descendants? Yunjian ignored the group of men. She turned around to untie Chen Sini and Tong Yulan, who was looking at her in horror. Chen Sini had been kidnapped once before. This time, it was probably because Yunjian was around, so she wasn't that afraid. On the contrary, it was Tong Yulan's first time witnessing Yunjian's methods. After she was untied, she was still in a daze. Yunjian untied the two of them and stood in the middle of the group of men who were begging for mercy. At this moment, she didn't seem like an ordinary junior high school girl. Instead, she seemed like a high and mighty king. You guys worked together with him to deal with me just now. Why shouldn't I kill all of you like how I killed him? Yunjian exuded a vicious aura. She pointed at the vulgar man who had fainted and was rolling on the ground and said. As she spoke, she raised her hand and a sharp dagger appeared in her hand. Everyone was shocked that Yunjian could magically produce a dagger. At the same time, the men couldn't help but clamp their legs together as they recalled the scene just now. No, no. The man with the camera just now shouted twice. Then he rolled his eyes and cunningly thought of a way to save himself. He shouted at Yunjian. As long as you let us go, I'll tell you who wants to harm you. Yunjian was well aware of who was trying to harm her. However, in order to let an innocent girl like Tong Yulan know the truth, Yun Jian pretended that she didn't know anything. She asked, "Who is it?" "Yes, it's a girl named Lu Xiuxiu." Boom. Sure enough, when Tong Yulan heard the truth, her mind exploded. She suddenly recalled the scenes from before. Xiuxiu, how could it be her? Why does she want to harm us? Tong Yulan's face turned pale, her expression extremely ugly. Yun Jian only wanted to let Tong Yulan know that she shouldn't be too naive. Otherwise, she wouldn't even know that she had been cheated by the people around her. She had no intention of comforting Tong Yulan or anything else. She curled her lips and looked at the group of men in front of her. With a faint smile, she said, "It's not impossible for me to let you go, as long as you do something for me." In the KTV private room. When Yunyi saw that his younger sister hadn't returned after going out for so long, he asked a girl to help him check the ladies' room. At this moment, he had already grabbed his jacket and went out to look for her. After Yun Jian and the rest were taken away, Lu Xiuxiu, who had pretended that she had just returned from the ladies' room, walked back to the KTV private room. At this moment, she was smiling. Beep, 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 suddenly, her phone's light flashed. Lu Xiuxiu hurriedly opened the message bar and saw a message from the other party. Chapter 192. Seeing that the matter was settled, Lu Xiuxiu immediately stood up. She casually found an excuse to walk out of the KTV and rushed to the hotel where the message came from. At this time, Lu Xiuxiu only knew that the matter was settled. She didn't even think about why the group of men wanted to give her the video in the hotel. She went there full of joy. She couldn't wait to see the video of Chen Sini, who dared to go against her, and Chen Sini's beautiful and delicate friend, Yun Jian, who she always disliked, being raped by men. She also wanted to see the response after the video was released. Lu Xiuxiu didn't realize how much damage it would do to an ordinary girl if she really succeeded in doing so. Maybe she just wanted to take revenge for a moment of pleasure. Ligu Hotel, in front of room 3011. Lu Xiuxiu excitedly knocked on the door. The door was immediately opened. "Come in, the video is inside." The man who came out to open the door said to Lu Xiuxiu in a neutral tone. Lu Xiuxiu didn't even think about it. She even thought that this matter was supposed to be a secret deal, so she stepped inside and deliberately closed the door. The moment Lu Xiuxiu entered the room, the man covered Lu Xiuxiu's mouth and shouted into the room, "Brothers, come out. This woman caused our big brother to lose his manhood and almost caused us to become like this. If we don't K her until she cries today, I'm a bastard." In an instant, a row of men walked out of the room. They were only wearing underwear and bare arms, and they all looked at Lu Xiuxiu with lecherous and angry eyes. This group of people was undoubtedly the group of men under the vulgar man. Oh! 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 Lu Xiuxiu, whose mouth was covered, shook her head desperately. She fiercely widened her eyes and looked at the group of men who were crowding towards her in horror. At this moment, Lu Xiuxiu completely tasted the taste of despair. Suddenly, the room was filled with charm. The men's lewd laughter mixed with the desperate cries of women begging for mercy. Outside the door, Yun Jian and the other two watched Lu Xiuxiu enter the room. Not long after, a series of ambiguous and creepy screams came from the room. "Are we going too far?" Tong Yulan lowered her head. Her body was trembling. She was afraid. Everything that happened tonight was unforgettable for her for the rest of her life. Too much. Yun Jian raised her eyebrows. She suddenly laughed coldly. "If you didn't go overboard, then the person in the room right now would be you." After that, Yun Jian didn't explain and left with Chen Sini. He left behind Tong Yulan, who was confused and on the verge of collapsing, with a pale face. In a certain country in the south, Ce and her two subordinates, Adam and Mo Sun, were currently staying in a hotel. They were preparing for tomorrow's exploration of the ancient tomb. Beep beep beep. Mo Sun's laptop flashed twice. He suddenly lifted his laptop and placed it in front of CE. Someone wants to bully her? CE frowned when he saw the news on the screen. Although he was outside, Yunjian's every move these days was under his control. Yes, but that person's penis has already been broken by her. That woman has also received her retribution, Emosen reported indifferently. CE suddenly stood up. When he heard that someone wanted to bully Yunjian, his anger spread through his entire body. Only his penis has been broken? Send someone to kill that group of people. As for that woman, sell her to a brothel. Since she likes to be a prostitute, let her be a prostitute for life. Chapter 193. Lu Xiuxiu, who was currently experiencing immense despair, did not know that a bigger storm was waiting for her. And all of this was because she had done a series of irrational actions in a moment of anger, which caused her to offend someone she shouldn't have. On their way back to the KTV, Yun Jian and Chen Sini happened to bump into Yun Yi, who was looking for them anxiously outside. Yun Jian and Chen Sini had been missing for more than an hour, but the people in the KTV room had yet to notice. However, as the elder brother, Yun Yi did not want to disturb the joyous atmosphere of the group. Moreover, he was worried about his younger sister since they were overseas and not in Longmen City, so he went in circles outside to search for them alone. It was not until he bumped into Yun Jian and Chen Sini walking back side by side on the road. Yun Yi ran over, his tall frame blocking the duo's path. "Where did you guys go just now?" Yun Yi panted. It was obvious that he had been searching for Yun Jian and Chen Sini for a long time as he asked them worriedly, out of breath. "Gu, we thought the KTV was too noisy and boring. We're going back to Longmen City tomorrow, so we wanted to come out for a walk." "Don't you think so, Sini?" Yun Jian was afraid that Yun Yi would be worried if he knew the truth, so she and Chen Sini had come up with a response. Therefore, the words that came out of her mouth were smooth. Yeah. Chen Sini was still a little sensitive to lying, but she agreed with Yun Jian. Yun Yi did not notice Chen Sini's reaction. He breathed a huge sigh of relief when he found them. Then, Yun Yi told Yun Jian solemnly, "Xiao Jian, don't run out on your own without telling me next time. I'll be worried. You must at least tell me when you come out next time." Faced with Yun Yi's genuine concern, Yun Jian felt a warmth in her heart as she nodded. "I know, brother." Yun Yi nodded as well. Then, the three of them went back to the KTV. Lu Xiuxiu did not return for the entire night. In spite of it, one could only imagine how pathetic Lu Xiuxiu was. Until the next evening when they took the plane back to Longmen City, Yun Jian and the rest did not see Lu Xiuxiu again. Only instructor Ding mentioned Lu Xiuxiu briefly, saying that her parents had come to pick her up in the middle of the night. Since it had happened, the instructors could not say much. In addition, Lu Xiuxiu's presence was not prominent, so other than Yun Jian, Chen Sini and Chen Sini who knew about it, no one else was interested in discussing it. Before boarding the plane, Lawson brought his mischievous brothers to send Yun Jian off. He vowed to Yun Jian, "Next time, Lawson, we'll win against you." Yun Jian found someone like Lawson who was brave enough to take responsibility for his actions and never played tricks behind people's backs. She simply replied, "I'll be waiting." After that, she narrowed her eyes. The moment they boarded the plane back to Country Z, it was the end of their week-long study abroad. Of course, the students learned a lot from it. They were deeply enlightened during this period of study abroad. When they returned to Longmen City, the school gave Yun Jian, Chen Sini and the rest a few days off so that they could have time to recuperate and rest. Hence, Yun Jian had been loitering in the military training camp and at home these days. At the same time, she quickly found Lu Haoze, the boy who knew that she had hypnotized him. Lu Haoze was a first-year student in a high school. Moreover, the high school he attended was the same as his cousin, Qin Fenger, who was in the same school. It was Friday at the entrance of Tanshi High School after school. Yun Jian stood at the school entrance with her arms crossed. Her pretty face and slender figure attracted many passers-by's attention. Chapter 194. Yun Jian watched as batch after batch of students walked out of the school gate with their heavy backpacks. She waited for about 5 minutes before a group of boys walked out of the school gate. Among the boys, there was a handsome and childlike boy who stood out the most. Lu Haoze, who was standing in the middle of the group, also couldn't help but look shy and childish. Lu Haoze. Yun Jian walked over and waved at him. When Yun Jian called out, not only Lu Haoze, but also the group of unfamiliar boys next to him all looked at Yun Jian. Seeing that Yun Jian was a standard beauty, some of the more active boys started to tease Lu Haoze. Yo, where did this little beauty come from? Lu Haoze, the little beauty is calling you. Why didn't you reply? A tall and thin boy standing next to Lu Haoze teased him. Lu Haoze's cheeks instantly flushed red. He was so shy that even the tips of his ears turned red. He couldn't even say a word to explain himself. He only looked up at Yun Jian for a moment, then quickly lowered his head and asked in a small voice, why are you looking for me? He definitely recognized Yun Jian. Yun Jian wasn't shy. She walked over and stood in front of Lu Haoze and the group of tall and thin boys. She said to Lu Haoze, I'm looking for you. There's something. Lu Haoze immediately guessed that Yun Jian was looking for him because he blurted out that Yun Jian knew hypnotism last time. However, he became even more shy. The redness on his face was unavoidable. It had to be said that Lu Haoze was very shy. Yun Jian felt that Lu Haoze was acting like this. Not only did she not despise him for blushing like a little girl, but she also felt that he was a little cute. This Lu Haoze was very similar to her little brother when she first met him in her previous life. Especially when he first met a stranger, his face was pink and tender. Yun Jian couldn't help but feel sad when she thought of her little brother. Oh, Lu Haoze had just nodded when a boy next to him pushed Lu Haoze in front of Yun Jian. Kid, go. Huh, your luck with women is here. These words made Lu Haoze blush even more. Yun Jian didn't care. Besides, there was nothing between them. It was normal for puberty students to be entangled in the love between men and women. If a girl went to look for a boy, or a boy went to look for a girl, it would be seen as an unusual relationship. Although Yun Jian was only 16 years old in her previous life, her mind was not as young as it was now. This was a feeling that only those who had lingered on the edge of life and death would deeply understand. In the end, Lu Haoze followed Yun Jian to an empty corner. Yun Jian looked at Lu Haoze, who lowered his head shyly, and asked him directly, you should know why I'm looking for you. Although Lu Haoze was a little shy, he was a smart child. He nodded and said, do you want to know how I can tell that you know hypnotism? Lu Haoze spoke cautiously, but it had to be said that this child was very smart. Yun Jian nodded. She curled her lips and revealed a charming smile. That's right. So you can choose to tell me directly, or you can choose not to tell me. But even if you don't tell me, I will know. Other than the secret of the sandalwood box, there was nothing that she couldn't find out. Lu Haoze's slender fingers rubbed against each other for a long time. Finally, he gathered his courage and looked at Yun Jian. I choose to tell you that I also know hypnotism. This is a technique that has been passed down in my family for generations. We have never told outsiders. I saw that you also used hypnotism that day, so I couldn't control myself and shouted. Because the hypnotism that you use seems to be very powerful. Even the most powerful elder in my family can't compare to 1/10 of you. Chapter 195. For some reason, when Yun Jian heard Lu Haoze say that his family elder's old friend used the same hypnotism technique as her, she suddenly thought of the old man who taught her these skills in her previous life. She actually didn't know what that old man was called, where he came from, or where he was now. This matter had actually happened many years ago. When she met the old man in her previous life, she was only 10 years old. She unintentionally saved his life when she was 10 years old. In the next 2 years, the old man taught Yun Jian everything he had learned throughout his life. However, he disappeared without a trace. But in Yun Jian's heart, this old man was like her life's enlightenment mentor. Perhaps without this old man, she wouldn't have achieved what she had in her previous life. Do you know where your elder's old friend is now? Yun Jian raised her eyebrows. Although her tone was as calm as usual, her heart was already in turmoil. She suspected that the old man was Lu Hao's family elder's old friend. Lu Hao slowly spoke under Yun Jian's expectant gaze. In the end, he only shook his head apologetically and lowered his head. I don't know. The sparkle in Yun Jian's eyes dimmed as well. In her previous life, she used her power to find the old man, but it was as if the old man had never appeared in this world. He completely disappeared without a trace. But our family's elders might know something. Lu Hao's next words reignited Yun Jian's hope. Really? Yun Jian stared at Lu Hao's young face and asked. Lu Hao's face turned red again. He said evasively, Really? If you want to know, I can take you to see the elder of my family. However, he has gone to the countryside and won't be back for a while. When he comes back, I'll ask you to go find him. Okay, it's a deal. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes. Then, she loosened her eyebrows and looked at Lu Hao with a faint smile. She continued, then let me formally introduce myself. I'm Yun Jian, a student of Longmen First Middle School's Grade 3 Class A. When your elder comes back, you can come to our school directly to find me. Lu Hao nodded his head again, agreeing to it. What a shy child. Yun Jian touched her chin and couldn't help but sigh in her heart. Although Lu Hao was older than Yun Jian treated him as a younger brother. A period of time, Yun Jian rested at home for a few days. She received news that Zhang Jifan's arrangement of the shop's renovation was coming to an end. This was much faster than planned. Once the shop's arrangements were completed, Yun Jian planned to officially start importing cars for sale. For the next few days, whenever there was a break, Yun Jian would strengthen her training in the military training camp. Since she had some free time this weekend, Yun Jian planned to accompany Qin Yiru to buy some winter clothes or cotton shoes for her. Qin Yiru's clothes were old and worn out. Who knew how many years these clothes had been worn? Even the color of the clothes had faded. Yun Jian claimed that she went out to do some temporary work when she was free. She said that she wanted to experience life better. Claiming that she had received her salary, she dragged Qin Yiru to a clothing store that was rather expensive but had nice and high-quality clothes to pick out some clothes. Chapter 196. Qin Yiru was comforted but melancholy at the same time. She blamed herself for not being able to give her son and daughter a decent life. In spite of it, seeing how filial her son and daughter were now, she could close her eyes in peace even if she were to die right now. Xiao Jian, I appreciate your kindness. I still have clothes to wear now. Keep the money for yourself. Qin Yiru pushed and shoved Yun Jian but was eventually dragged into the clothing store. Mom, I earned this money. I can spend it however I want. Now that I'm buying clothes for you, you have to accept it even if you don't want to. Yun Jian pressed her lips into a smile and pulled Qin Yiru into the store. Yun Jian looked more like an ordinary, well-behaved girl who only knew how to be filial to her elders. Qin Yiru felt warm inside when she heard Yun Jian's words. Then I'll buy one piece of clothing. Just one piece, no more. Qin Yiru finally relented, afraid that Yun Jian would buy more clothes for her, so she spoke first. The interior of the clothing store was quite beautiful, but it was because of the store's decorations that people would think that the items in the store were not cheap. That was why Qin Yiru emphasized that she would only buy one piece of clothing. Just one set. One piece of clothing, a pair of pants, and a pair of shoes. I want you to wear the entire set of clothes I bought. That's the only way. Yun Jian snuggled up to Qin Yiru and shook her hand as she spoke coquettishly with a grin. You child. Qin Yiru tapped Yun Jian's forehead. There was indescribable affection in her tone, but she still acquiesced in comfort. Yun Jian would only show her childish side in front of Qin Yiru. Hello, how can I help you? The store's attendant was a polite person. When she saw Yun Jian and Qin Yiru walk in, she did not mind that Yun Jian and Qin Yiru were dressed plainly and went over to greet them politely. "Mom, see if there's anything you like." Yun Jian turned to Qin Yiru. Qin Yiru nodded and did not reject her daughter's kindness, choosing a few pieces of clothing that she liked to try on. In the end, she decided to buy the cheapest piece of clothing in the pile. Yun Jian did not say much. She paid and left after the attendant sent her off respectfully. Then, Yun Jian bought a pair of pants and a pair of shoes for Qin Yiru from another store. "Mom, I'll carry the bags," Yun Jian said and snatched the 3 bags. Qin Yiru was even more gratified when she saw this. Yun Jian and Qin Yiru were about to leave the mall and walk out. This was a shopping mall. The mall was divided into many levels and sold different things on each level. It could be said that it had everything. At this moment, Yun Jian and Qin Yiru were walking down the stairs on the 2nd floor. Ah! Murder! Murder! At this moment, there was a sudden scream from the entrance. Because there was a lot of people in the mall, it was difficult to turn around and walk away, let alone run away. At this moment, there was a sudden scream from the crowd. Many people did not see the situation at the entrance clearly and began to panic. Yun Jian and Qin Yiru could see 3 or 4 masked men in black rushing in from where they were standing. These men each had a watermelon knife in their hands. They stabbed and slashed at anyone they saw. These criminals seemed to have appeared suddenly and at the same time, they caught everyone off guard. A few unlucky people did not even have time to react before they were stabbed in the vital parts by these criminals who suddenly rushed into the mall to kill people. They fell to the ground on the spot. Ah! 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 In an instant, the screams and shouts, as well as the sounds of people jostling and running away, filled the entire mall. By the time Qin Yiru reacted, one of the criminals with a watermelon knife was already rushing towards Yun Jian and Qin Yiru. Qin Yiru understood the severity of this sudden situation. She was so scared that her face turned pale. Chapter 197. Out of motherly instinct, the first thing that came to Qin Yiru's mind when she was caught in such a dangerous situation was not that Yun Jian's unusual skills could save her. It was that she wanted to save her daughter. Therefore, she instinctively pushed Yun Jian away while she stood where she was. Even if she had to die, she had to buy time for her daughter to escape. The scene was already in a state of panic. Everyone was running away like headless flies. No one dared to stand up and fight with the criminals. Yun Jian's docile gaze shifted abruptly as malice exploded in her eyes. Seeing that the criminal was about to stab Qin Yiru, who was closest to him with a long watermelon knife, Yun Jian pulled Qin Yiru behind her without a second thought. Qin Yiru shrieked when she saw it. "Xiao Jian, no!" She thought that Yun Jian was going to take the knife for her. Qin Yiru's shriek was soon drowned out by the chaotic screams. No one around them noticed the commotion as they were busy running for their lives. Realizing that the criminals were going on a killing spree, the crowd was eager to push everyone around them away to block the criminals so that they could have time to escape. Clang! Before Qin Yiru could snap out of her wails, Yun Jian had already kicked away the watermelon knife in the criminal's hand. Ah! Ah! Help! Help! Sob! A well-dressed woman who ran past Qin Yiru shrieked and grabbed Qin Yiru, pushing her toward the criminal who was slashing at her. The criminals killed everyone they saw, stabbing and slashing anyone who was in front of them. Seeing that she was about to be caught by the criminals, the woman pushed Qin Yiru away in fear so that she had time to escape. "You're asking for it." When the woman pushed Qin Yiru toward another criminal who was chasing her, Yun Jian had just kicked away the watermelon knife in the criminal's hand. With a low growl, rage engulfed her. Ah! 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 Seeing that the knife in the criminal's hand was about to plunge into Qin Yiru's heart, the woman squeezed her way to the back of the crowd and ran away, looking terrified. Qin Yiru was shielded behind Yun Jian and pulled out by the woman. She felt like her heart was in her throat. Part of it was because he was worried that Yun Jian had just defended him from the robber. Another reason was that the other robber's blade was already inches away from him. She could even feel the arrival of the Grim Reaper. However, in the next second, Yun Jian dashed over. She pulled Qin Yiru away and blocked the knife for Qin Yiru with her hand. Qin Yiru was suddenly pulled away by the woman to block the knife. Yun Jian did not react in time, and it was too late for her to react. Therefore, she used her fastest speed to pull Qin Yiru away again. In order to prevent Qin Yiru from getting hurt, she used her own hand to block the knife. In addition, the criminal's watermelon knife had already cut Yun Jian's arm. In an instant, fresh blood spurted out. Yun Jian's eyes instantly darkened. She was not a god. In her previous life, she had killed all her enemies, but she herself was also covered in blood. She had not experienced this kind of hurt in a long time. The feeling of her skin being cut open and her flesh being torn apart reminded her of the feeling of killing. You want to kill my mother? I'll take your lives. A murderous aura erupted from Yun Jian's body. The blood that flowed from her arm dripped onto the ground, but she did not even look at it. She looked at the group of criminals with a murderous aura. At this moment, even the criminals who had killed until they were numb to it were all stunned. When the surrounding people who had run far away came back to their senses, they could see a young girl with blood flowing from her arm looking at the group of criminals with a murderous expression. Was she not afraid of this group of murderous criminals? Chapter 198. Xiao Jian. When Qin Yiru saw the blood flowing down Yun Jian's arm, she ran over in a panic, wanting to grab Yun Jian's arm to stop the bleeding. Yun Jian stopped her, shielding Qin Yiru behind her silently as she looked at the criminals who were all looking at her with watermelon knives in their hands. Those who were almost killed, but Yun Jian's situation had attracted the criminals' attention. All of them took the chance to escape madly. Within seconds, there was no one left on the first floor. Except for the first few people who were killed on the ground and whose life or death situation was unknown. Since the mall only allowed entry and exit, meaning that there was only one entrance, the second, third, and fourth floors of the mall were crowded with people. It was not that these people were unwilling to leave. On the contrary, no one was willing to stay and watch the gory scene. In spite of it, none of them could escape. The only exit of the mall was now guarded by a group of murderous criminals. They could only squeeze upstairs with all their might, hoping to survive until the end and wait for the police to send someone to rescue them. Everyone was afraid that they would be caught and hacked to death by the criminals. Everyone was fearful in the face of death. From where they were trapped, they could see Yun Jian's fair and tender arm clearly. Blood dripped onto the floor from the knife wound, connecting with the ghastly pool of blood on the ground. The girl, however, did not seem to feel any pain as she allowed the blood to flow from her arm. It was a sight that sent chills down one's spine. A group of 4 masked criminals in black made a few hand gestures and went for Yun Jian with watermelon knives. It was obvious that this was a premeditated massacre. It was the peak hour of the mall, so there were many people walking around, to the point that it was crowded. The criminals had chosen to massacre people here because there were so many people here. 1 slash and 1 slash was enough to kill someone. The people here were all civilians. Even if someone was stabbed to death, no one dared to stop it because everyone was afraid that they would be killed. This fueled the criminals' desire to kill even more. Now, Yun Jian had appeared out of nowhere. She had kicked one of the criminals' watermelon knives away and pulled Qin Yiru to avoid another one's stab. Judging by her skills just now, she was definitely not an ordinary person. Hence, the criminals went for Yun Jian. They didn't know that they were slashing the blade of the Grim Reaper. There was no return. Slap. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes. Keeping Qin Yiru within her protective range, she extended her leg and stomped the handle of the watermelon knife that had fallen to the ground from the thug she had just kicked away. The watermelon knife bounced off the ground due to the rebound force. Yun Jian reached out and caught the watermelon knife without even bending over. Xiao Jian. Xiao Jian. Qin Yiru called out in panic, as if realizing what Yun Jian was about to do. Splat! With the sound of a knife stabbing into flesh, the criminal closest to Yun Jian was stabbed to death by Yun Jian in the next second. Yun Jian, who had stabbed the criminal to death, did not panic like everyone had expected. On the contrary, she was calm as if she had just killed an ant. The other 3 criminals narrowed their eyes, but they still stabbed at Yun Jian with their watermelon knives. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. 3 sounds were heard, but the 3 criminals had yet to react. Yun Jian did not even move from her spot. The 3 criminals collapsed on the spot as their throats were slit by the watermelon knives that Yun Jian had flung out. Murder. This young lady had killed someone. She was so skilled. It was as if she had practiced it countless times. In spite of it, the people who witnessed the scene were not as frightened as they had expected. Instead, they breathed a sigh of relief. Chapter 199. In such a critical moment, no one dared to go against the criminals who were wielding watermelon knives. Everyone was thinking that it would be best for them to avoid the situation, but none of them considered that the criminals were not skilled in martial arts. Even if they were trained, there were only 4 of them. There were at least thousands of people who were running for their lives in the mall, if not tens of thousands. Among the thousands of people, there were plenty of men in the prime of their lives. However, no one dared to stand up against the criminals who were slaughtering innocent people. Human nature was the most fundamental manifestation of human nature in times of crisis. In the end, the one who stood up to save everyone was this underage girl who looked like she was not even 18 yet. While everyone breathed a sigh of relief, they could not help gawking at Yun Jian. Xiao Jian, you. Qin Yiru was stupefied by Yun Jian's murder just now. Her daughter who had always been sensible and obedient, had actually killed someone. Her Xiao Jian had actually killed someone. Killing people is against the law. Mom. Yun Jian took a step closer to Qin Yiru and held Qin Yiru's trembling hand. Mom, if I didn't kill them just now, we'd be the ones who died. Qin Yiru looked at Yun Jian as she shuddered. She opened her mouth, filled with doubts about Yun Jian's behavior just now, but she could not get anything out of her. Yun Jian was right. Moreover, from a legal point of view, if one killed the other party when one's life was threatened, it was considered self-defense and would not be punished. Xiao Jian, your hand is still bleeding. I'll take you to the hospital. Let's go to the hospital and get it bandaged. Qin Yiru suddenly felt something wet on the back of her hand. Looking down, she saw that the blood on Yun Jian's arm was gushing down even more violently. She panicked, forgetting about what Yun Jian had done just now as she pulled Yun Jian out. Mom, hold on. A sharp glint flashed across Yun Jian's pretty eyes as she patted the back of Qin Yiru's hand to comfort her. Qin Yiru was indeed stupefied. She had never encountered such a situation in her life. Yun Jian, on the other hand, simply tore a corner of her shirt into a rectangular bandage and bit on the makeshift bandage made from the fabric, wrapping the bandage around the wound on her arm out of habit under everyone's gaze. The wound was not deep for Yun Jian, but the cut was deep enough to see the flesh and bone. Yun Jian took it without even blinking. The others were surprised as well. Such a deep wound, not to mention a little girl like her, even if it were an adult, who would be able to bandage their own wounds so habitually like her? Judging from the speed of his bandaging, it seemed like he had practiced it very well. How old was she? Just as everyone was thinking about this, Yun Jian had finished bandaging her wound. She lifted her leg and walked up the stairs leading to the first floor and the second floor. The group of people on the second, third, and fourth floors were more or less afraid when they saw Yun Jian, who had just killed the gangster, walking up the stairs. As a result, when Yun Jian walked over, the group of people automatically squeezed to the side to make way for Yun Jian. In the end, Yun Jian came to a corner and pulled out a woman in luxurious clothes. You, what are you doing? The woman looked at Yun Jian in fear. The moment she saw Yun Jian, she thought of Yun Jian's expression when she killed the gangster. Her heart trembled with fear. This woman was the culprit who pulled Qin Yiru and used her as a meat cushion when they were escaping and caused Yun Jian's injury. I'm not planning to do anything. Yun Jian looked at the woman with a smile. She smiled strangely, and in the next second, a fiery slap landed on the woman's face, making a loud noise in this place where no one dared to make noise. Chapter 200. Ah! The woman screamed. She was wearing a designer coat and carrying a Chanel bag. It was obvious that she was from a wealthy family. At this moment, she was slapped by Yun Jian. Yun Jian's slap was not light. After the woman was slapped, she coughed violently. Something seemed to have fallen from her gums. The woman covered her mouth and coughed desperately. It was a white tooth. This woman's tooth was broken by Yun Jian. But seeing Yun Jian do this, the people present did not even dare to fart. This little girl had just killed someone. She had killed someone. Who would dare to interfere in this matter? My tooth. When the woman saw that it was her white tooth that was exposed in her hand, she felt dizzy and almost screamed and fainted. The woman raised her eyes and glared at Yun Jian fiercely. Then, she insulted her. Who do you think you are? Do you know who I am? How dare you hit me? Although the woman was afraid that Yun Jian had just killed a few criminals, they were still criminals. They were criminals after all. If Yun Jian did not kill them, they would kill more innocent people. The woman really did not believe that Yun Jian would dare to kill her. Did she dare? Did she dare? Yun Jian ignored the woman's evil words. She looked at the woman in disgust and said to her, "This slap is for my mother." As she spoke, Yun Jian stood where she was and swung her hand to slap the woman's heavily made-up face again. Pfft! This slap was so strong that the woman, who did not react in time, spat out a few white teeth from her mouth. Yun Jian's skills had improved by leaps and bounds because of the military training. Even her strength could not be compared to before. This slap was almost enough to knock out all the teeth in the woman's mouth. However, Yun Jian knew that this was the woman's own fault. She should not have used her mother as a shield. She did not care about herself, but if something had really happened to Qin Yiru just now, or if she could not save her in time, Yun Jian could not even begin to imagine the feeling of death that pierced her heart. I'm warning you with this slap. The next time I see you, you're dead. Yun Jian spat out this sentence fiercely. At this moment, the woman's whole body trembled. She was originally very aggressive, but at this moment, she didn't even dare to let out a fart. She had a feeling that if she said another word in front of Yun Jian, this little girl would really kill her. Just like how she had killed those criminals just now. After giving the woman 2 slaps, Yun Jian went down from the 2nd floor. At this moment, a group of uniformed policemen and a group of armed special forces soldiers rushed in from the door. There were also ambulances rushing to the scene and immediately started to treat the casualties at the scene, as well as the people who were still alive. Among this group of special forces, Yun Jian actually saw a familiar face. That was Gu Junjian. Gu Junjian and the others had received a notice that there were criminals brutally killing civilians here, so they hurried over. They had received orders from their superiors to immediately kill those criminals on the spot. However, they did not expect to see all the criminals dead the moment they entered the door. Unexpectedly, they also found Yun Jian here. Yun Jian and Gu Junjian exchanged glances. At this moment, a fat police officer holding a notebook and a pen walked in front of Yun Jian and asked her, "What happened just now? Who killed these criminals?" The woman was still afraid of Yun Jian and did not dare to say a word. Now that the policeman had appeared, she was confident again. She was no longer afraid of Yun Jian and seemed to have forgotten Yun Jian's warning. Chapter 201. The woman's words caused all the police officers, medical staff, and special forces soldiers to look at Yun Jian in shock. Other than Gu Junjian, everyone who had just arrived was completely shocked. If it was said that these murderous gangsters were slashing at the crowd with knives, they were killed by a group of men at the scene. Even so, the group of professionals at the scene would still be shocked. After all, these criminals were holding watermelon knives in their hands. If an ordinary person fought against them with their bare hands, it would be very easy for them to be stabbed. It could even threaten their life at any time. However, what appeared in front of everyone's eyes was that other than the people who had collapsed on the ground floor, there was only Yunjian and Qin Yiro left in the lobby. There was also the group of 4 criminals. The criminals were all dead. Coincidentally, the cloth that was temporarily used as a bandage on Yunjian's arm was stained with bright red blood. It was obvious that she had just fought with the criminals. As the saying goes, seeing is believing. In addition, there was a group of people standing on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floor of the shopping mall. They were all trembling with fear. These criminals were really killed by this young girl who was not even 18 years old yet. In contrast to the group of people who were shocked, Gu Junjian was very calm. He even secretly cursed in his heart. This Yunjian was someone he had his eyes on. She was a special forces candidate that he had personally selected. She was the person who had killed the international top 10 assassin, Wolf Blade. Weren't these criminals looking for their own deaths when they encountered her? She killed someone. She killed someone. She even broke my teeth just now. You're the police, hurry up and arrest her. Put her in jail, put her in jail. The woman upstairs pointed at Yunjian as if she had gone crazy and screamed loudly. Yunjian narrowed her eyes. She turned her head slightly and glanced at the woman with her sharp and vicious eyes. After the woman who was still screaming crazily received Yunjian's murderous gaze, her horrified voice immediately softened. Then, she shut her mouth and covered her broken teeth at the same time. Yunjian's gaze made her feel that if she said another word, Yunjian would dare to kill her even in front of the police. She was a demon. The woman shuddered in her heart. Cough, cough. The fat police officer raised the black pen in his hand and ordered Yunjian, "Little girl, it seems that you need to come with us." Xiao Jian. Qin Yiru grabbed Yunjian quickly and looked at the officer pleadingly. "Officer, can you let my daughter go to the hospital to treat her wound first?" Qin Yiru knew that they had to make a trip to the police station now that something like this had happened. Not only them, but all the witnesses present had to make a statement. However, Yunjian's wound was only bandaged with a simple cloth. She was only worried that her daughter's wound would become infected or continue to bleed. This. The fat police officer hesitated for a moment before finally nodding. "All right, follow the medical staff to the hospital first." Qin Yiru thanked him gratefully. "Thank you, officer." "Thank you." "All right, go quickly." The fat police officer waved his hand for Qin Yiru to bring Yunjian to the hospital first when he saw more blood stains on the cloth bandaged around Yunjian's arm. It was undeniable that the fat police officer was a kind-hearted person. After all, if Yunjian and Qin Yiru escaped or did not go to the police station, he would have to bear the responsibility. Yunjian, who came out of the hospital, had a new bandage on her arm and various ointments applied to it. Qin Yiru breathed a sigh of relief before they made their way to the police station. There were already a lot of people standing at the entrance of the police station. They were all witnesses of the crime scene. All of them still had lingering fears as they trembled when they made their statements in the police station. It was obvious that they had yet to recover from the shock. Chapter 202. When Gu Junjian saw Yunjian walking over with Qin Yiru, he glanced at the wound on her hand and asked, "Is your injury okay?" He had obviously heard from the other witnesses that Yunjian was injured because she was trying to save Qin Yiru. Otherwise, with Yunjian's skills, she would not have been injured at all. However, in that situation, Yunjian was able to save Qin Yiru from a knife that was inches away from her. Her skills were definitely top-notch. Just by listening to the witnesses, Gu Junjian knew that if he had been in Yunjian's shoes, even if he had used his own life to save Qin Yiru's life, or to push Qin Yiru away, he would not have been able to do so. Yunjian was indeed the person who had killed Wolf Blade, who was ranked 10th on the assassin ranking. It's okay, Yun Jian smiled lightly and introduced Qin Yiru to Gu Junjian. This is my mother. Oh. Gu Junjian looked at Qin Yiru curiously after hearing that. He saw that there was still a trace of lingering fear on her tired face. He just wanted to see who this woman was who could give birth to such an amazing daughter like Yun Jian. Mother, this is the captain of the military special forces. Yun Jian did not plan to hide anything as she pointed at Gu Junjian and immediately introduced him. She just did not point out that Gu Junjian was the captain of the Advanced Special Forces. Advanced Special Forces soldiers were different from ordinary Special Forces soldiers. The Advanced Special Forces that Gu Junjian was in was not only a team that directly belonged to the country, but more importantly, those who could enter the Advanced Special Forces were definitely influential figures in the country. Gu Junjian was the captain of such a powerful team. Even so, in Qin Yiru's eyes, Gu Junjian was already a big shot. Qin Yiru was puzzled as to why her daughter knew such a big shot. She couldn't help but greet Gu Junjian politely. Nice to meet you. Since it was someone her daughter knew, she could not refute Xiao Jian. Gu Junjian nodded. He also looked at Qin Yiru in a friendly manner and revealed a meaningful smile. Yes, nice to meet you. Your daughter is very outstanding. Gu Junjian sighed from the bottom of his heart. Qin Yiru was also stunned. You're here? It's your turn to give your statements. Come in. At this moment, the fat police officer saw that Yun Jian and Qin Yiru had returned, so he walked over to greet them. As a result, their conversation ended abruptly, and Yun Jian and Qin Yiru entered the police station. Gu Junjian followed them in as well. Gu Junjian was the captain of the Advanced Special Forces. His position was high, so he could enter and leave the police station freely. The process of recording Yun Jian's statement was much more complicated than the other witnesses. After all, it was a fact that Yun Jian had killed someone. It was unknown what Gu Junjian had told the police officers, but Yun Jian left the station after giving her statement. She did not even have to deal with the tedious matters. Qin Yiru, who left the police station, was even more confused. She asked the same question she had just now. Xiao Jian, how do you know such a big shot like the Special Forces officer? Actually, Qin Yiru had many questions she wanted to ask. Why did her daughter change so much? Mom, actually, I've joined the Special Forces. I'm already a candidate for the Special Forces. Yun Jian blinked and suddenly confessed when they walked past a deserted area with no one around. Chapter 203. What? Xiao Jian, you've joined the Special Forces. Qin Yiru clutched her chest, stunned by the sudden news. Her eyes were trained on Yun Jian as she exclaimed in a raised pitch. Since Yun Jian had decided to come clean, there was no need for her to hide the truth anymore. She held Qin Yiru's hands and told her gently, Mom, it's my own choice to join the Special Forces. Yun Jian's words had almost cleared up all of Qin Yiru's doubts. It even made Qin Yiru think that Yun Jian's sudden improvement in skills was due to her joining the Special Forces and training. Even Yun Jian's swift killing of the thugs just now was the result of her training in the Special Forces. Qin Yiru felt like she had found the source of all her doubts, but at the same time, she could not accept it all of a sudden. Yun Jian stood where she was, waiting for Qin Yiru to digest the truth. After a long time, Qin Yiru held Yun Jian's hands. She did not know how she should feel toward Yun Jian right now. Qin Yiru only felt that she was a failure as a mother. As a mother, she did not even know what her daughter had been doing recently. In spite of it, Qin Yiru still held Yun Jian's hands and told her in detail, Xiao Jian, I don't object to you staying in the Special Forces, but you have to promise that nothing will happen to you. I know that it's dangerous, but you're not allowed to be in danger. Promise me and I won't stop you. Qin Yiru was not like some mothers who treated their children like treasure. She loved her child, but she respected her choice as well. Of course, this was on the premise that her child's life was guaranteed. Yun Jian knew that being a Special Forces soldier was dangerous at all times, but she nodded at Qin Yiru. Mom, I promise I'll be fine. Being a special forces soldier was dangerous, but it paled in comparison to the various organizations she had to come into contact with in her past life. What was certain, however, was that she would return to her previous life's environment one day. Of course, the person who wanted her, slaying God, dead was not born yet. Amen. Qin Yiru leaned toward Yunjian and rested her head softly beside Yunjian's before caressing Yunjian's forehead. To Qin Yiru, no matter how mature her Xiao Jian was, she was still a child. After returning to school, Yunjian had a few days of peace. It was just that there was a rumor in school recently that caused a commotion in the entire Longmen city. A talkative and lively boy in class bragged to the class after class as if he was there himself. My aunt was there when the criminals massacred the people in Northgate Mall. Wow, are you for real? I heard that a bunch of criminals charged in that day and hacked people with watermelon knives. Another student chimed in immediately. The incident caused an uproar in Longmen City as the students in school were discussing it as well. Of course it's true. My aunt said that she was standing on the 3rd floor at that time. She thought that she was done for, but guess what? In the end, they were all killed by a 15-year-old girl. F***ck, the girl's that strong? Someone else chimed in when the boy bragged just now. Yun Jian, the main character of the conversation who had just returned from the washroom, happened to pass by the students who were talking enthusiastically. Hey, Xiao Jian, I remember that you went to Northgate Mall to buy clothes with your mom that day too, right? Chen Sini was engrossed in the boy's story. She suddenly recalled that Yun Jian had told her that Yun Jian had accompanied her mother to Northgate Mall to buy clothes, so she mentioned it. Chapter 204. Hey, if that's the case, Yun Jian, you were there when the incident happened that day? One of the students couldn't hide his excitement and hurriedly asked Yun Jian. Everyone in the class wanted to know the answer to this question. Although the boy who was bragging just now said that his aunt was there, that was what he heard from his aunt. He didn't see it with his own eyes. If Yun Jian was really there at that time, then she must know the whole story clearly. In fact, Chen Sini also wanted to know what happened at the mall. However, she inadvertently made Yun Jian the center of attention in the class. She winked at Yun Jian apologetically. Yun Jian was in a good mood at the moment. She smiled back at Chen Sini and then looked into the pairs of expectant eyes in the class. She nodded and said, "That's right, I was there." Then hurry up and tell us. What happened that day? Could it be that those criminals really died in the hands of a 15-year-old girl? The student who couldn't hide his excitement asked Yun Jian again, his eyes shining with fascination. Yun Jian only smiled slightly. She pursed her lips and looked at the group of students who were especially curious about what happened that day. She raised her eyebrows and said, "If I said that I killed those criminals, would you believe me?" What? Hearing Yun Jian's words, everyone present turned pale with fright. She was the one who killed the criminals in the legends? Opening their eyes again, Yun Jian was indeed 15 or 16 years old. The girl who killed the criminals in the rumors was also around this age. Could it be that she really killed those criminals? Just kidding. In the next second, Yun Jian dissolved the tense atmosphere at the scene. Yun Jian's half-true and half-false words made the students present relax. However, if she really killed someone, how could she come back to school so quickly? Even if she didn't, she would be locked up by the police for a few days. The group of students immediately dispersed noisily. Chen Sini and Zhang Xiaofeng, on the other hand, ran over to surround Yun Jian after the group left. Jian, you must have killed those criminals, right? Chen Sini went to Yun Jian and asked softly. Zhang Xiaofeng, on the other hand, looked at Yun Jian with admiration. Yun Jian nodded subtly and looked at Zhang Xiaofeng, asking, "Did you train when I wasn't here?" "Yes. Of course, master, I've been training very hard." Zhang Xiaofeng, who was called out, put away his deep admiration for Yun Jian and flexed his muscles, gesturing at Yun Jian in a funny way. Zhang Xiaofeng and Chen Sini were slowly getting used to Yun Jian's unbelievable performance. After all, the two of them had witnessed enough of the things that had happened before. So, master, when are you going to teach me something better? Zhang Xiaofeng gestured again and went up to her with a grin. We'll talk about it after you've mastered the chopstick throwing. Yun Jian pressed her lips together slightly and smiled subtly. Chopstick throwing was a skill she had Zhang Xiaofeng practice. It was actually very simple. He placed an empty beer bottle on the ground and got Zhang Xiaofeng to toss the empty beer bottles in the distance with his chopsticks. Toss one beer bottle after another would count. The movement sounded simple, but when Zhang Xiaofeng practiced it more and could easily throw the chopsticks into empty beer bottles far away, his basic skill would be more or less there. Although the movement sounded simple, many moves were closely related to it. Especially when it came to firearms, aiming was the most important point. Just like chopstick throwing, one throw and one go in would be accurate, while a gun required one to aim and shoot. Chapter 205. Oh. Zhang Xiaofeng was disappointed when he heard that he had to practice throwing chopsticks again. However, he understood that the basics were not something that could be learned overnight. Hence, he started thinking about how to improve the accuracy of his chopstick throwing. Chen Sini made a funny face in the direction where Zhang Xiaofeng was walking. Then, she turned around and looked at Yun Jian with a smile. She stuck out her tongue and looked extremely cute. Coincidentally, the bell rang to signal the start of class. Thus, the group of students who had gathered together to gossip about various trivial matters returned to their seats. The teacher quickly carried a stack of textbooks into the classroom. Yun Jian lived a comfortable life again. Now that Qin Yiru knew that she was training at the military training camp, she could go to the camp openly on the weekends. At this moment, it was not long before her first mission in a month. Today, Yun Jian was sweating profusely from the high-difficulty training. After returning from the military training camp with Chu Ning and the rest, they agreed to go to a high-class clubhouse to party for a while. However, they were stopped by a high-class sports car. Seeing the person in the car, Yun Jian frowned deeply. Him? Yun Jian knew the person in the car. She had met him once after her rebirth. This person was one of the 4 leaders of the Inhan organization, Shuang. Shuang was Siyi's subordinate. Logically speaking, Shuang should not know her since she had been reborn. However, he actually came all the way from country M to country Z to look for her? What did this mean? Who are you? Can you move the car? You're blocking our way. Chu Ning said when she saw Shuang suddenly driving a sports car in the middle of the road. It was normal for her to say this. After all, this was a pedestrian area. Shuang deliberately drove the car here to block their way. Of course, Chu Ning did not know that Yun Jian knew Shuang. Hence, she said this. I'm looking for her. Shuang frowned slightly. His slender finger pointed in the direction of Yun Jian, and an innate murderous aura shocked everyone present. The 4 leaders of the Inhan organization were all handsome and dashing, and they were all quite young. This was what Yun Jian knew. I know him. Yun Jian remained silent for 2 seconds before speaking to Chu Ning and the others. Why don't you guys leave first? I won't be going to the party. Yun Jian knew that Shuang wouldn't come looking for her for no reason. Furthermore, it had been a long time since Ce went to the ancient tomb, and there was still no news of her. Hence, she spoke to Chu Ning and the others. Ah. You're not going? Chu Ning muttered, then pursed her lips and said, all right. Yun Jian nodded and got into Shuang's sports car. Shuang drove the sports car into the distance. Finally, it stopped at a quiet and deserted place. Did something happen to him? Yun Jian didn't wait for Shuang to speak and asked hurriedly. She didn't even notice the nervousness in her voice. Shuang frowned and nodded at Yun Jian. Then, he said, young master entered the ancient tomb in the south with Adam and Mo senator not long after. We lost contact with him. Our communication device was cut off. We can't contact him. Shuang sounded serious and nervous when he said this. How long has he been in the ancient tomb? Yun Jian didn't care why Shuang came looking for her after Ce went missing. She asked hurriedly. About 10 days. They prepared food when they went in. But if they don't come out after a long time, I'm afraid. Shuang didn't continue. However, even Shuang, one of the 4 leaders of an Han organization, was so serious. Yun Jian knew that this matter was serious. The sandalwood box and the ancient tomb in the south. What secrets did it hold? She gritted her teeth, paused, and said to Shuang, I'll go back and prepare. Do you want to go to the ancient tomb with me? Chapter 206. Shuang frowned. He looked at Yun Jian and said, I have to stay in the organization. Ce had told him before that even if something happened to him, Shuang had to stay in the organization in case someone took advantage of the situation. Actually, Shuang did not come to Yun Jian because of Ce's instructions. He knew that Ce had no intention of hiding anything from Yun Jian. A woman that could catch the eye of his young master would naturally not be an ordinary person. That was why Shuang came to Yun Jian to ask for help. And obviously, Yun Jian did not disappoint Shuang. At this moment, Shuang suddenly felt that Yun Jian and his young master were a perfect match. Okay. Yun Jian nodded. Yun Jian naturally knew what Shuang meant. He had to stay in the Inhan organization because the Inhan organization was similar to the Kosha mercenaries. Once all the leaders were not in the organization, those who were hiding in the dark would take action at any time. Yun Jian did not expect herself to go to the southern country so suddenly. But when she heard that something had happened to Ce, she could not sit still. A muffled voice in her heart told her that she had to find him. If he was alive, she had to see him. If he was dead, she had to see his corpse. When Yun Jian came back to her senses, she had already driven her LaFerrari sports car to Country A. Country A, which was the southern country, was the location of the ancient tomb where the sandalwood box was excavated. As for the few days that she disappeared, she asked Gu Junjian to lie to Qin Yiru on her behalf. She lied that the army wanted to train the group of special forces candidates better and that they would undergo long-term close training. Even the school had reported it. Yun Jian took the detailed map that she got from Shuang and drove her car at the speed of light. She did not drive to Country Z. Instead, she parked her car at the provincial airport and bought a ticket to Country A. It was already 4:00 in the afternoon when the ancient tomb of the sandalwood box was excavated in Country A, which was a relatively poor country. She rushed to the ancient tomb without stopping. The ancient tomb was located in a deep ravine. When Yun Jian arrived, she could see many tents set up around it. Yun Jian carried a lot of things she had prepared in advance and was about to enter the tomb. Little girl, wait. Suddenly, a deep voice stopped Yun Jian in her tracks. Yun Jian turned around to look. He saw a solemn middle-aged man standing in front of him. This man held a lot of archaeological equipment in his hands and wore a pair of glasses on the bridge of his nose. Looking at the group of people standing behind the middle-aged man, as well as their attire and appearance, there was no doubt that they were an archaeological team. The appearance of the sandalwood box and the rumor that the ancient tomb was only accessible attracted experts and scholars from all over the world, as well as archaeologists. Even famous figures from all over the world came one after another. However, not many people entered the tomb. There was even a large group of people from all over the world stationed here, but very few actually dared to enter the tomb. Naturally, he was afraid that once he entered the tomb, he would not be able to come out. It was just like the previous few batches of people who entered the tomb and never came out again. Just now, the middle-aged man called out to Yun Jian in Chinese, so it was obvious that he was from Country Z. However, the middle-aged man looked at Yun Jian and asked, "Little girl, you are from Country Z, right?" Yun Jian nodded slightly. "You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.